Reddit is a place built around communities. Millions of people gather every day to talk about movies, video games, sports, and just about every hobby imaginable. But not all communities are built around harmless hobbies or interests. Some are built for predators looking for sympathy. And other corners of the website become a last resort for people desperately begging strangers to help them when no one else will listen. The deeper you go into Reddit, the more you realize that some of its communities aren't just strange, they're horrifying. Today, we're diving into some horrifying corners of Reddit, and viewer discretion is advised. This one gets disturbing. And make sure you like the video and subscribe to the channel, and let's get into it. r/convicted individual support. And that's not the name of the subreddit, but it's S offender support. I just can't say it, but you get what I'm saying, and let's get into it. Reddit can be a dangerous place for someone to share their thoughts, feelings, and even opinions. Look at places like r/politics or r/am I the asshole, or really any subreddit, and you'll find hundreds of heated arguments. One post can lead to users berating each other, name calling, and so far as judging one another's character. It's like once someone types in Reddit on their web browser, they feel no need to hold back anymore. But I recently came across one community that by far is the most insane. It's one called r/offender support. It's for people who have been convicted of predatory offenses that landed them on the registry for those such crimes. To keep it simple for the rest of the story, I'll refer to them as convicted individuals. The first thing that you may be thinking is that it seems insane. It sounds like a bunch of people who have done awful things and want somewhere they can complain about their consequences. And honestly, that was also my first thought. One of the first things I come across is a pinned post by one of the moderators that gives an introduction to what exactly the subreddit is, and more importantly, what its purpose is. The post is titled, "For the Curious, the Lurkers, and the Trolls." The post is pretty long, but the gist is in the goals they list, which are: number 1, to offer support in navigating being on the registry. Number 2, to listen. It is never okay to minimize or excuse having committed a crime that harmed another person. It is not tolerated here. But we do understand that the road to rebuilding your life after having served your time for an offense is often made virtually impossible to do so. Number 3, to share and provide information about how to find housing and employment. Number 4, to try to answer questions about the multitude of ever-changing laws and rules surrounding registry restrictions. Number 5, to provide resources that will lower the chance of reconviction. Number 6, we will not offer legal advice, but can sometimes explain certain legal processes that are confusing. Number 7, to offer support and encouragement for spouses and family members who are trying to navigate this system with a loved one. Number 8, to share information in the hope that it will help others avoid committing a crime. And number 8, to promote change and healing. So far, it feels reassuring that it doesn't seem like the group's members have intentions of bypassing the severity of their crimes that they're talking about. But then I read more of the post. It says, "Now you read all of that. And if you still feel the need to come here and tell a woman she deserves to be violently hurt and graphically describe horrible things you want to happen to her children because she loves someone who got a BJ from his younger girlfriend in the backseat of his car the day after he turned 17 when he was in high school 15 years ago, or you want to tell an autistic 20-year-old who got caught in something predatory that he was confused by to begin with, to go commit S-word himself, then go for it. Get it all out of your system. Then look in the mirror. See that? That person is a monster. For everyone else, welcome. We're here for you. And actually, you know what? Trolls, we're here for you too. Because you wouldn't be here spewing violence and hate if you were okay. Now that feels harsh. I mean, this subreddit is dedicated to talking about people who committed some of the most serious and heinous crimes someone can commit. So it feels a little hypocritical to call an innocent outsider a monster when you yourself are one. Of course, it's not okay to send death threats like the ones they mentioned, but that rant gives the impression that they treat all of these convicted individuals like they accidentally walked onto the registry or something. And any assumption that maybe most of them are actually just guilty is criticism that they chalk up to harassment and bullying. But it's not just this one moderator. It looks to be a running theme. There's some debate on it, but many others feel similar. One user asked this question: how many people are actually offenders? And many replies are pretty surprising, to say the least. If everyone were caught for everything they have done, especially as teenagers, and considering the breadth of the criminal law, I would wager most everyone would be a convicted individual of some stripe. I would argue most people have committed some sort of offense in their lifetime. I'm not saying everyone is a perv, but how many men do you know that have dated a significantly younger woman or went to the bathroom in public? These, among others, don't really answer the OP's question. Rather, they just take it and use it as somewhere they can put their frustrations about the system. And the amount that these types of comments are repeated is honestly concerning. Because in reality, statistics show that the type of cases they are talking about are much more of a minority than they are letting on. The United States Sentencing Committee states that 98% of people were convicted for terrible, violent, and disgusting crimes, most of which I cannot name here. Only 2% was because of something other than that, like maybe, quote, using the bathroom in public. Which does not give the impression that everybody would be a convicted individual, but that actually most people are rightfully placed on that list because they're downright dangerous. But let's take a look at some of the users on here to see if they should or shouldn't be placed in that category. This is one post from November of 2025. First time post, part of my story. It reads, I wrote a lot before mentioning it and don't know where to put it, but I'm 21, turning 22 soon. I guess I should start with my childhood, I'm not sure. I think this started when I was introduced to adult content in the 4th grade. I wasn't necessarily attracted to it, but as I got older, around mid-teenage years, I became severely depressed. I attribute this to my household growing up. Very chaotic, and it called for me to be constantly hypervigilant. Extremely stressful. Anyways, I guess that's really when it started. Eventually, I tried to emulate some things I saw in videos, which probably forced some warped connection / lack of boundaries, risky behavior, close calls, and I never learned or cared to. Depression has never left me. It's only gotten worse and I've only grown more comfortable with it. Adult content, aside from cannabis, was a coping mechanism. The guilt, shame, fear, and embarrassment that came from these acts just made it worse. It's creating a terrible cycle of shame, pleasure, and shame. Along with my depression, I'd say I only became more depraved. I'll skip to it now, where I'm being charged with indecent exposure because I was taking pictures of women and periodically, confusing maybe, exposing myself in a Walmart of all places. Both things I picked up from adult content. I guess I should say that it wasn't my intention to flash anyone. I honestly don't believe I did. Walmart theft prevention probably made the call. Apparently there's footage. I spent the rest of that day in jail. I have my second court date on the 17th where I think I will take my plea. To pick up where I left off, I think one of the worst parts is the confusion of my guilt. Is it just because I've been caught? Or am I actually remorseful? I hope it's the former. But the most painful and the biggest source of my shame is the people in my life I'm going to disappoint. The people I love the most. I feel like a monster. Not like it's new. That's part of the deep shame I feel. But it's the center of my attention. All the times I numb myself to stomach what I'm capable of is catching up to me. I feel unredeemable, condemned. My education, future career, love life, and life in general is all at risk, and I feel trapped. I'm terrified, so helpless and utterly hopeless. I want to wake up from this nightmare. And this user got one thing right. He needs help, but what he did is nowhere near excusable. Whether or not he's remorseful, which he's not even sure about, is besides the point. These crimes were not victimless. There were women involved who will likely be scarred forever. They are not walking away unscathed. So sure, the registry creates problems. This user will have a hard time finding a job, dating, and gaining his family's trust back. These are just called consequences. It's what happens when someone does something bad, something that hurts other people. And even though moderators seem to want everyone to give these users the benefit of the doubt, it's a little hard to in a situation like this. Who accidentally stumbles into a Walmart and gets naked in the bread aisle? That's widely known as a pretty disgusting thing to do, and people who think they can get away with it should also get in trouble for it. But other users don't really care to get OP to take any accountability because they all feel the same way. And it's not just people that have been convicted themselves. There are family members on here as well. Someone posts, admission of guilt. Is it possible for an admission of guilt to not be used in a trial somehow? My husband was high the night he was arrested and taken into custody and questioned. He was scared and thought his best option was to essentially say, yeah, sure, whatever, I did it. Because he wasn't trying to get locked up for years upon years. He didn't realize at the time what he was facing. Now it's all coming back to bite him. His public defender says there is no legal leg to stand to file a motion to exclude his admission, but they could argue it to a jury. His issue is he doesn't trust a jury. The only evidence is testimony. An expert on the subject and his statements to police. No eyewitnesses, no physical evidence, nothing. Edit to add, my husband was questioned for a while, unsure exactly how long, denying the entire time, but ultimately he felt like he had no other choice. He knew they weren't going to give up and that no one would believe him. He knows what he did by admitting was stupid. It's like they're desperate for help for all the wrong reasons. Because in the comments, she explains that it's not like her husband admitted to something like peeing in public, but actually it was for exploiting an ex-girlfriend's kid. Instead of taking into consideration the weight of an accusation like that, she says that because he was using cannabis, he mistakenly admitted it. What she hasn't considered is that maybe it just actually happened. And maybe we should be focused on getting help for the victim. And with things like these, it feels obvious that they should be convicted. The public has a right to know which people around them have done horrific things like this, to give the public an opportunity to stay away from offenders. But even still, the general consensus here is that there should not be a public registry, even with the case of a genuine predator. A man by the name of Matteo Condalucci became a convicted individual after he'd done unspeakable things to his daughter for years and years. But what are users on this subreddit most concerned about? The fact that he was murdered by someone named James Fairbanks, a resident of Omaha, who had stumbled upon Matteo when searching the registry of an area he was planning on moving to. He fell into a rabbit hole of researching him and what he had done, even going as far as passing the offender's house. And when doing so, James described him as, quote, pretending to wash his truck while staring at a group of kids playing in the street. James had also noticed a playground in the offender's backyard, and with all of the details put together, it was too much for him to bear. He became obsessed with him. He couldn't eat or sleep. He couldn't think about anything else other than who Matteo may hurt next. James said, quote, I couldn't, in good condition, allow him to do it to anyone else while I had the means to stop him. Which led to a post on the convicted individual subreddit titled, This is terrifying. People wonder why we don't want public registries. And it's filled with comments like, quote, this angers and disgusts me that something like this has happened and how casual he is about committing murder. I hope he gets the death penalty. No remorse. First damn comment, it's about a defense fund. We are the only country that I know of that has a public registry. All others that have registries are only available to the police officers. The best thing we can do as a country, if we still need a registry, is to have them only available to police officers and no housing restrictions. The housing restrictions don't do anything, or they make things worse. So the murderer of someone as evil, predatory, and dangerous as Matteo Condalucci should die, but they're acting as if the monster himself is innocent. Make it make sense. Cases like Matteo are honestly the perfect examples of why there should be public registries. What about all of his neighbors who have kids that might play near his house? What if he comes across as the sweet old man across the street and no one thinks anything of his friendliness until it's too late? I'm not saying he should be murdered, but I think it's absurd to say his crimes should be hidden. And of course, not all convicted individuals are like this. There are plenty of posts on here that showcase examples of people that haven't committed something so egregious, or users that started behaving in ways when they were young and never got the help they need, and the shame and guilt they feel is just crippling. But that doesn't take away from the culture on this subreddit, which is honestly pretty disgusting. It's one thing to want change, to want a system that better helps people, that prevents terrible things from happening instead of just punishing people and giving them no chance of rehabilitation. But to ask to have the whole registry removed feels gross and predatory in itself. To demand something like that just feels so minimizing to the victims of such horrendous crimes like the ones of Matteo. Because ultimately, they are the most important person in all of this. They have been harmed the most. And whether the registry should be removed or made private is irrelevant until the day that we figure out how to prevent the crimes, the hurt, and all of that harm from happening in the first place. And this subreddit truly ranks among some of the top most disturbing, disgusting, and just downright horrifying subreddits I have ever gone through. Daryl Pratt. In November of 2015, the video game industry was met with a new force. IGN, one of the leading media outlets for all video game news, hired a brand new writer, Alana Pierce. Alana is from Queensland, Australia, where she began her journalism career in 2012. She worked for a couple of small companies, as well as news and TV stations, until deciding to relocate in 2015. It was around this time that her career really started to take off. It was also at this point that she started to create content on YouTube, and as time went on, she gained more followers. More people were interested in what she had to say, and people became dedicated fans. This can be seen across her multiple channels, social media accounts, and even a subreddit dedicated to her, r/Alana Pierce. Users post interviews, updates, and discussions about her work. It's pretty normal stuff, which is why, when one post seems a little off, it becomes very noticeable. Which is exactly what happened on June 25th, 2019, when a user by the name of Daryl Pratt made a post that just said, "What's up, boo?" That's it. No other context. No pictures, no video, no other comments. It's very out of place for the subreddit. No other users make any post remotely like that on this page. And that isn't the only post made by the user on r/Alana Pierce. There's one more from the same day, just 2 hours earlier. All this one says is, "Hey." It's just odd. But what becomes concerning are the comments. How are you not banned at this point? So, you're back, huh? I hope you're doing better, man. And good to know you're alive. And at this point, I hope you're just joking and not actually obsessed with her again. These users are commenting on the end of a long and treacherous road that Daryl Pratt has gone down. These last two posts were the last anyone ever heard from him, but it was an exhausting journey to get there. So let's start at the beginning. The first time Alana Pierce got unwelcome attention from the internet was shortly after she began a relationship with voice actor Blaine Gibson. As she was living her life and continuing with her normal content, she received this comment on one of her YouTube videos. Wow, what a surprise. She has a boyfriend? But for real, what is it with the females and their need to constantly be in a relationship? Like, why can't they be single for at least a month? I watched all your videos since the beginning. I hope I can meet you one day and we could have something great, but no, you had to go and settle with that first douchebag that walked in front of you. I bet he doesn't even tell you how beautiful and freaking hot you are every day. I bet he didn't even care about you until you opened up to him. I'm so tired of every single woman I like having a relationship. That's it. I'm so done. This comment got popular on r/nice guys for good reason. Clearly, someone can't get a girlfriend. And Alana just replied back, "I was single for over 2 years before dating Blaine." But nice guys don't stop. And as a woman in the public eye, Alana continued to get these kinds of comments. Specifically, from one account under the name of Bruce Wayne. He used a picture of a penguin for the profile picture, and over time, Alana started to see these penguins everywhere. He was not one of a kind. She had these types of fans often. People that would leave tons of comments and send messages that were just too much. Usually nice, but over the top. And the more they came in, the more overwhelmed she would get. Her approach in the past would be to politely ask them to stop. Not that they had to stop watching her videos, but to cool it a little, which is completely reasonable. But every time she would do that, they would freak out. The rejection shattered their ego, and with that kind of blow, they became angry. Now, they hated her. They dedicated their entire account to trying to ruin her career. The comments would switch from praise to criticism. Her every move was still being watched, but now from an enemy instead of a fan. So, with someone like Bruce Wayne, Alana wanted to try something different. She started to slowly block him on different social media accounts, depending on which ones he was most active on. But this gentle approach quickly came to a halt after she got some work done on her eyebrows, something called microblading. Just a simple cosmetic thing that tons of women do every day. But Bruce Wayne, he hated it.
But he ended up going on IGN videos, which is the company that I work for, and if people would say something nice about me, he would reply to them and be like, she got her eyebrows tattooed. Basically, he was incredibly angry that someone he had put on an unrealistic pedestal had done something to themselves that he didn't like. And that was the point where I was
This
like, hold
was
up.
the beginning of Daryl Pratt. The first post ever made to his Reddit account is titled, "Can I get in trouble for sending a girl love letters?" Unfortunately, this post was removed by Redditors and I'm not able to find it archived anywhere else, but I can get a good idea of how insane this post was just from the comments alone. Someone says, "It may not be illegal by the letter of the law, but it's not really okay. You should stop. You were blocked on social media. That's an indication that this woman does not want to have contact with you. Even though you said nice things, she doesn't want those comments. She likely finds you weird and creepy. I would strongly recommend that you stop sending letters, stop contacting her, and seek professional help. You probably would get a restraining order or no contact order if you continue. Not a lawyer, not legal advice." And this is fantastic advice, but Daryl Pratt does not listen. He instead replies with, "I didn't know she didn't want those comments. She banned me without even a warning. I just wanted her to know how amazing she is. I would do anything just to be friends with her online. I like sending her letters just so she knows how cool she is. I don't see why this is wrong." And users are now hoping that this is just a troll. Someone who saw what happened with Alana and is playing a prank. Because otherwise, this person is teetering on the edge of danger. Which, from his next couple of comments, he seems to be leaning in one direction. And it's not the one any of us, or especially Alana, want to see. He says, "Thanks for the advice, but I think I'm going to keep sending letters for now. If she tells me to stop, I'll stop, of course. The guy in the movie The Notebook sent like 365 letters to that girl. I feel like if I send them for long enough, she will realize how much I care about her. And maybe she'll be friends with me then. I'm not a troll. I've been following her on social media for over a year, before she even worked at IGN. I've invested a lot of my feelings into her, and now she blocks me. I want her to like me so bad and don't know what else to do. I mean, I don't know how else to make her like me. I thought about making a new account with a different name and following her with that one and pretend to be someone else and hopefully leave comments that she will like. But I would much rather her like me, not a fake account." he just doesn't stop. He makes another post asking again if making multiple accounts will get him in trouble, instead of listening to any of the comments telling him why and how he should get help. About a month passes, and there's no word from Daryl. But also, for him, still no communication with Alana. Each day that passes is agony for him. He's heartbroken, lost, confused. So he makes another post, hoping this time someone will give him the answer he's looking for. Me, 18 male, need help making up with my friend, 21 female. I haven't talked to her in about 3 weeks. It's truly baffling, and in some ways, very sad, how much this person believes that he and Alana have some kind of relationship. At one point, he says that he lives in Kentucky and she lives in California, so they'll probably never meet. But that doesn't stop his delusions. In his mind, they're best friends. His comments to her are them talking, and her blocking him is like a breakup. He's grieving the loss of her, which still is not her problem. None of this. No matter what he is struggling with or what led him to behave like this, Alana doesn't deserve all this harassment while she's just trying to work. But I don't know that Daryl ever saw it that way. He was only ever focused on his pain, on how this affected him. Meanwhile, he was flipping Alana's life upside down.
He sent letters to my workplace. He also said that he was planning to call the front desk at IGN and have them transfer to me to the phone on my desk, so we got rid of the phone on my desk, so that wasn't an option. And there was also a threat regarding E3 that year in 2016, so I had 2 just giant, terrifying looking security guards walking around with me for the entirety of last year's E3, just to make sure that nothing weird happened. So
but these things didn't matter to him. The only thing that eventually got him to back off was when users told him that Alana had a boyfriend, which she did. They weren't lying. And Daryl did not take this well. It was like his whole world came crashing down. His dreams, his hopes, everything he had worked towards was crushed. Honestly, it's pretty surprising that he gave up when finding this out. Given his history, he seems like the kind of person who would have persisted. And he did, in a way. Just not directly. Instead of sending countless letters and begging her, he moved to a different tactic: manipulation. He made her feel like his life was in her hands. These comments have since been deleted, but Alana shared them in her video.
Humiliating for me. So then amidst all of this stuff about me having a boyfriend, he said, "How would you feel if your girlfriend found out someone else she likes more than you? That's how I feel." And then the last 2 comments are, "I'll most likely be dead tonight, so that should make her extremely happy, and then fuck this world." And then he didn't use the account again.
She was rightfully extremely upset. Not only had she been thrown through the ringer the last couple of months, watching her back and fearing for her life constantly, but now she felt the weight of someone's life on her shoulders. She mentions in her video that she understands where this mentality comes from, like Daryl mentioned in his comment about The Notebook. So many shows and movies have characters that chase endlessly after women, no matter how far they run, but by the end of the story, they end up getting married and living happily ever after. But that's not how real life works. But Alana suspects that's where Daryl learned that behaving like this is not only okay, but the way to win her heart. When really, it just tormented her and left her distraught. She has no idea what happened to him after those comments. She thinks that he has made a few other accounts where he continues to talk to her, but nothing has ever been that intense again where she feels like she needs to put up a boundary again. Of course, I don't hope that he was being truthful in his last comments and actually died that night. I hope that he finally came to his senses and got the help he needs. And I do hope that was the end of it all. Even if Alana stopped getting harassed, it's possible he moved on to another woman and stalked them instead. People have found a few accounts that they suspect is him, but nothing is proven, and either way, no other profile has caused as much trouble as Daryl Pratt has. And hopefully, it stays that way. Internet user 1998. One of the most entertaining subreddits on Reddit is one called r/whatisthisthing. With almost 3 million weekly visitors, there's tons of users every day who post pictures of random or obscure looking objects that everyone investigates. Each post is like a puzzle, and it's a race to see who figures it out first. It's usually something wholesome or just not that exciting. In fact, it's even pretty anticlimactic sometimes. Someone comes in anxious and worried that some small device or substance found in their teenager's room is a drug, and that their child is in extreme danger, and the comments then reassure them it's nothing, and everyone moves on with their day. So when something pops up that actually looks concerning, people stop. They really investigate, looking into every possible explanation, hoping it's not what they think. One post made on July 12, 2017 by internet user 1998 became one of these. It became so serious that the moderators actually removed the post because they felt like the OP needed to get actual help from law enforcement and not from other Redditors. The title of the post reads, "I think I'm being watched. Is this a camera?" And I wish we could see the picture that was attached, but like I said, it was removed. But the users that did see it not only confirmed that it is in fact a camera, but that the OP might be in danger. Because not only was this object deceivingly a camera disguised as a pen, but it was hidden in a very private space, somewhere where no one should be watching. The bathroom. Worse than that, we come to find out that OP is 16 years old. They give more context here. The post reads, "Okay, I'll write a full update / life story now. My parents died in 2013, sending my brother and me to foster care. For the past 3 to 4 years, I've lived with this guy and his dad who have done some awful / creepy shit. It would feel wrong to exclude the fact that he supported my brother and me for so long, but this is unacceptable. A week ago, my brother moved out, leaving me with this guy who just put a camera facing the shower this morning. I posted this thread on my work break. Now I'm off work at home after talking with him about it. I don't want to live here anymore. I haven't for a while, but I have no one that will take me in at 16. I've built the last 3 years of my life living here. I have no idea what to do. I've tried calling CPS before and they came and left. That can't happen again. I'm pretty much alone in this house with no one to talk to or help me. What am I supposed to do?" Some people suggested they go to an Office Depot or Staples and confirm that it's a camera, which the OP did. The employees there agreed it most certainly was. So now, it was real. The OP could be in real danger. The first thought is to call the police or CPS, but like they said, the thought of contacting them again and them leaving was terrifying. They say, "Maybe because I don't want to be left alone with a deranged perv who's mad that CPS was called." So the user is stuck in between a rock and a hard place. Either way, it feels like they're backed into a corner with a monster. One solution is given by user Japanese Knotweed, who comments and says, "Where are you? You need to go to the actual CPS office in person. Take the camera pen with you. Bring a change of clothes and anything small, transportable, and precious. Everything you need to be reasonably comfortable for a few days, and just go. Sit down in the waiting area and say, 'I don't feel safe going back to the house until I know what this is and what's on it.' Then don't get up until an option you feel good about shows up. There are short-term respite foster care providers in most areas, and this is one of the ways they can be of great help." Their only reply to this by OP was, "I called CPS for a different reason earlier this year, in a sort of way that would make it look like someone else called. They wanted to talk to me and ask every question right in front of the dude. Saying I'd like to talk to them in private didn't look too good. Well, I told them every messed up thing he's done the past few years, and especially what happened earlier that week, and I'm pretty sure they just saw me as a dramatic lying teen. Then they left." It makes sense why the user has no trust in CPS. The system has repeatedly failed them, pretty miserably. So much so that their first instinct, and really the only option in their mind, is to ask Reddit, which is just heartbreaking. She's just a kid. She should be able to trust the people who are supposed to keep her safe. But instead, they made her feel like she was too much. And now she's forced to live in this fear. Eventually, the user does give in and gives CPS one last try, even though she has low expectations. The user wrote, "Update, CPS has been called. I have a place I can stay at if they take me when they come. Now I play the waiting game. I'll update when they come." Although the OP has never updated us. They only left one last comment. That's the only reason I was hesitant to call in the first place. I've done it before, and they just left. I can only hope. It's a terrifying cliffhanger to leave us on, but that's all there is. Whether or not CPS actually helped her, if she could find a safe space to stay, or if her creep of a foster parent ended up keeping custody of her, we'll never know. Like internet user 1998 said herself, we can only hope. And alright guys, that wraps up some horrifying corners of Reddit. Would you like to see more videos like this in the future? If so, please comment down below. I'd love to hear your thoughts. I read every single comment, so please comment down below. And make sure you like the video and subscribe to the channel. It really does help so much. And I just want to say thank you so much for watching. From the bottom of my heart, it means the world. And yeah, once again, thank you guys so much for watching. And this was Snook, and I'll see you next time. Bye. Hey, what's up guys, and welcome back to the channel. And today we're getting into some unnerving confession threads, and oh boy, these are some of the most unhinged, depressing, and just downright disturbing confession threads I have ever read before. So you're gonna want to make sure to stick around, and I appreciate you stopping by. It means the world. And make sure you like the video and subscribe to the channel. And all of these confession threads are from Reddit, and oh boy, does Reddit have some disgusting and disturbing confessions. So just trigger warning right now, because these are really, really disturbing and heavy, and just like I said before, kind of depressing. So just a quick trigger warning now. But this video will be long enough already, so sit back, relax, grab a drink, and grab a snack. And without further ado, let's get into some unnerving confession threads. In 5th grade, I pushed a girl in a monkey cage enclosure and ripped the skin of her arms off. I attended an elementary school that is near to a small park where there were about 10 exotic animals like hawks, snakes, and monkeys. It's basically a small zoo. We usually wait there for our school service to arrive. We were just sitting around the bird cage-like enclosure of this aggressive monkey that we were making fun of and waiting for the school service to arrive. When the school service arrived, we all stood up and raced to the school service front seat. I knew that I won't be first, so I pushed the girl who's in front of me. She tripped close to the cage. The monkey got startled and went crazy instantly. The monkey grabbed her arm and ripped her skin off in one bite. It is the gnarliest thing I ever saw. Her face turned pale white, I think because of the shock and loss of blood. We carry her out of the park while she and some of us were stained with her blood. An old guy who was working in the park sees us and immediately carried her and called an ambulance. The day after that, the monkey is not in the park anymore, and we have a new school service driver. Edit. This happened in the Philippines. I'm living in Canada now. And for those people who keep telling me this is fake and making this up for karma, which I don't know what that's for, I hope you guys are right. I made this account to find this movie in the subreddit called Tip of My Tongue and got a recommendation for this subreddit. I saw people in here posting horrible stuff that they've done, so I tried my best telling mine. I get that I'm getting so much hate for this. What I did was horrible, and I really wished I'd make it up to her. She got a pretty messed up centipede-like keloid scar on her arm without knowing that I am the one who pushed her. And now let's get into some of the top comments. One user says, "Damn, did you get in trouble or did no one find out that you pushed them? Did the girl know it was you?" And the OP replied and said, "I didn't. They all thought it was an accident and blamed it all to the monkey and the school service driver for being late and irresponsible." I took back my cheating ex just to F with her head. My ex and I had been dating for 2 years when I realized she was the woman I wanted to spend the rest of my life with. We never fought or argued. We got along swimmingly. I trusted her implicitly and felt she was as good as it was ever going to get. I bought a ring she had gone out of her way to fawn over and planned on asking her to marry me after we got back from vacation. I even called her dad and asked him to have lunch with me so I could ask for his permission to marry his daughter. Mere days before I planned on proposing, she suddenly stopped returning my calls and texts. We never really went more than a day or so without speaking, so I decided to stop by her house after work to check on her. We had keys to each other's houses, and it wasn't out of the ordinary to let ourselves into the other's house if we needed to. Her car wasn't there, and an SUV I didn't recognize was in the driveway. I let myself in with the intention of leaving her a note to call me. When I opened the door to her bedroom, I heard the shower running and her voice coming from the bathroom. I froze when I realized I heard a male voice as well. I took a couple steps into the room and realized they weren't speaking. They were panting and moaning. I heard her trademark pleasure noises. I'm not going to get into what he said, but basically that. I was listening to my girlfriend having intimacy with another man. While I had no intention of confronting them, I still wanted to see it with my own eyes. So I walked to the open door of the bathroom and looked into the mirror that faced the shower. Sure enough, there she was, cheating on me. I left. Almost as soon as I get home, she texts, "Hey, sorry, I've been out of touch. I've been staying at my mom's because I was sick." I ignore her calls and texts for a couple of days and return the ring before I finally confront her in person. She loses it. She calls me a stalker, says I invaded her privacy and she's glad she cheated on me because I'm such a POS. She won't answer me on how long it has been going on or who he was, so I left. Fast forward several months. My ex is in a relationship with this guy, and I'm casually seeing a younger girl I really like, but I know I have no long-term future with her. She's drop-dead gorgeous, witty as hell, has an insatiable appetite for intimacy, and she's an incredible cook. The only downside is she's a huge party animal. Doesn't matter what day of the week it is or what time she has to get up in the morning, she's getting staggering drunk and doing booger sugar like it's her job. She never pressures me to get serious or commit, so I figure I'll ride it out until the endless partying gets on my nerves. After finding out I'm seeing someone, my ex starts blowing up my phone, apologizing and begging me to take her back. She says it was a stupid mistake. She said I worked too much and didn't pay enough attention to her, but she's never stopped loving me. She said being with someone who doesn't appreciate her helped her realize I'm the best thing that ever happened to her. I don't want her back in the slightest. The minute I saw the person she was with, cheating on her, I was done with her. I've spent months being heartbroken over breakups before, but for some reason, actually seeing her infidelity helped me instantly move on. Not to say there weren't a few sleepless nights or wild-ass benders, but I didn't sit around pinning for her. As far as I was concerned, she was trash and I was over it. I initially ignored her, but decided that she has presented me with a premium opportunity to exact some revenge. I call her back and tell her I'm willing to talk, but give no indicator on which way I'm leaning in terms of reconciliation. I arranged to meet her at a park near her house and show up 15 minutes late. She's sweating bullets, chain smoking, visibly trembling, upper lip quivering while she begs for forgiveness. At this point, I didn't really have a plan in place. I just knew that I was going to mess with her, so I let her beg. I eventually cut her off and asked, "How can I ever trust you again?" "She'll earn it back," she said. "She'll work tirelessly to regain my trust, and she'll show me how important I am to her." I'm intrigued to see how far I can push her, so I tell her I'm willing to give it a shot, when in reality, I'm just scheming ways to make her feel like total crap about herself. She invites me back to her place, where she basically tears off my pants as soon as I cross the threshold and starts doing some intimate things to me. We have intimacy. She's always liked it rough, really rough. And then they get super duper freaky, and the OP says she couldn't be happier. She falls asleep and I sneak out. I check my phone and have a booty call text from Party Animal. So I tell her to meet me at my place. We get roaring drunk and have intimacy. In the morning, I walk her out and see that there's a piece of paper taped to my windshield. It's from my ex. It says, "Just wanted to tell you how much I love you. Have a good day." When I realized she came over to leave me a love note while I was in bed with another woman, I feel an immense sense of satisfaction. So I kept it up for a couple of months. I never told Party Animal that I was having intimacy with my ex, but I got the feeling she wouldn't really care. One of my friends said he saw her at this bar, making out and eventually leaving with some dude. So I figured she was doing the same thing, and it didn't really matter. I never outright told my ex I was having intimacy with anyone else, but occasionally I dropped some non-too subtle hints about my affection for Party Animal. Since she was playing the penitent role, she wasn't in a position to accuse me of anything, or even show signs of discontent. I took it up a notch. I started making X buy my groceries, cook me dinner, take my car to her father's auto detailing shop and get my car cleaned, run my errands, and have intimacy on command. I was cultivating a sadistic side of me that I didn't really know existed, and I was pushing it to an extreme that eventually made me feel too guilty to continue. As the smacking, and hair pulling had become rote, I got into the habit of putting her in uncomfortable positions during intimacy, and stuff that you only see in adult videos and think no one does that in real life. If she didn't like it, she never let on. She did it all for me, grinned, and bore it. One night she came over, made me dinner, and packed my gym bag for the morning. Then we had intimacy. She broke down and cried during. She sobbed and said, "I want to be your wife. I want to be yours forever." When that line sunk in, I realized I had tortured her enough, but not before I used it as an excuse to end it with her. I acted shocked, said that was too much too soon and that she was suffocating me. Told her to go home and I'd call her when I was ready to see her again. She was shaking with long, racking sobs, and she begged me not to leave her. Pangs of genuine guilt were prevalent as I realized I had really just taken this too far and my ego had gotten out of control. I never spoke to her again. She attempted to get a hold of me incessantly for a couple of months, stopped by the house for a few times, luckily never when I was home, and even showed up at my job asking to speak with me. But I managed to avoid every attempt, and eventually she gave up. And she got back with the person she initially cheated on me with. They're engaged now. Party Animal and I had a bit of a falling out when I decided I couldn't keep up with her maniac partying, but we eventually became very good friends. No matter how much I may have thought so at the time, X didn't deserve what I did to her. I surprised myself with how much pleasure I took in hurting her, and it eventually started to sicken me how sadistic I was acting. I can't necessarily say I'm proud of myself, but at least a little part of me was satisfied. And now let's get into some of the top comments. One person says, "Holy crap, dude." Another user says, "Stuff like this just scares me." Someone else says, "Damn, dude, I'm all for revenge to a lying and cheating girl, but man, it totally sounded like you went too far. The fact that she didn't give up on pleasing you for as long, despite how much you were torturing her, kind of says something on her part, or at least, in my opinion. It kind of sounds like she tried as hard as she could to repair the relationship, but you wouldn't let her. I do not want my H/opiate addicted sister to recover. My sister was always just a sad person. I can remember this from when we were young. I don't think I fully processed the depths of it, but I noticed then, and the more I think of it as an adult, the more obvious and the sadder it is to realize. She started sneaking alcohol at 13, and by 16 was drinking and smoking weed daily, with occasional uses of pills. Then at around 19, she got into a bunch of other sort of pills, and by 21, she was a full-blown H addict. At 24, she got pregnant with my nephew, Tommy, not his real name, and stayed clean through her whole pregnancy and had him, despite almost a decade of various addictions that had done a bit of damage to her body. He was healthy and happy. She and Tommy were fine for about 3 months, but she got back into the painkillers, and eventually, H. Luckily, my mom caught it early, and instead of getting the courts involved and all that drama, we all agreed my mom would take the baby in, and she could have him back when she was sober for a full year. Well, my mom was older and stressed at work as a nurse at an understaffed hospital. And because I was home after graduating college with no job, I ended up doing almost all the work raising him from 3 months on. I even put off getting a job to be with him. I eventually got a job and started saving up to move. My job had discounted childcare, a huge perk, so we decided it made the most sense to take Tommy with me, about 2 hours from home, because it would be too expensive for my mom to pay, and my sister still wasn't sober. I have now had Tommy for almost 7 years. I know he is not my son, but he is my son. I am so attached to him, it is unhealthy. I love him more than anything. He is my best friend. I feel deeply bonded to him. There are no words to describe how much I feel about this boy. We've done everything together for 7 whole years. Literally every day. I have never gone more than 5 or 6 hours without him, and that's only since he started school last year. If I'm being honest, I know this is unhealthy. Even if he were my own biological son, I'm still sad and scared. My sister has been sober 8 months, which is about as far as she's ever gotten. I want her to be healthy and happy, but I don't want to give Tommy back if she makes it the full year. She's starting coming up to my place for weekends, and I know she wants him back. That is what is keeping her in this fight for sobriety, but it is killing me on the inside. I need him. I will pray for her. I want her to be happy. I feel terrible. I'm not wishing for her failure, but I know deep down I don't want her to be sober so that I can keep Tommy with me. It makes me feel like a horrible person to feel this way. I love him so much. I love her so much. And now let's get into some of the top comments. Someone says, that's some brutal honesty. Another user says, maybe she can move in with you and you could both co-parent Tommy for a while. If it is a good living situation, then no need to change. But it doesn't work, then at least you tried. Children need stability. And is it really the best thing for Tommy to move him to a new school and have him move into a new house and with a new guardian all at once? And someone replies and says, I was thinking the same thing. Kid getting stability and support from OP. The mother has a helping hand raising the kid and someone to help avoid temptation. Someone else says, thankfully your nephew is old enough to know the difference between normal behavior versus a junkie's behavior and can tell someone if she begins using again. In a perfect world, mom will stay clean and give her son the best possible life. However, the same desire/need for her to be high and forsake her son at 3 months will probably reel its ugly head again. Support your sister and nephew by encouraging her sobriety and staying a constant in his life. Sadly, the odds are in your favor that you will continue raising him. And someone else says, file for custody or call a lawyer and see what options you have. You are that child's parent and all he knows. Mom can be the fun aunt. It is not in his best interest to be taken from his parents to go to an unstable environment. Sorry, but the odds are against her, statistically speaking. And someone replies and says, minute OP is getting lawyers, social workers, courts, or police involved, that is the minute she can kiss her family goodbye. Seriously, people, learn to settle your problems inside your house. And someone else says, agreed, OP, at least speak to a lawyer to learn what your options are. And then finally, someone says, you are Tommy's parent. Your sister has never been there for him. She selfishly chose drugs over her child for many, many years. A new attempt to get sober does not change that. If your sister really loves Tommy, then she needs to understand how devastating it would be for a young child to be torn away from the only parent he's ever known. She needs to put his needs over her own wishes and leave him with you. Perhaps she could have visitation with him at your house. You don't need to stick to an agreement that someone else made about when she could have him back. And someone else agrees and says this. I was scared to say it like this because I understand addiction can be insanely hard, but I think that OP is 100% this kid's father, and the sister shouldn't be able to just take the kid back. And this was the only post we have ever received from the OP, and that is just such a heartbreaking situation. And I wonder what ended up happening, and I wonder if the OP kept custody of the boy or if the OP's sister ended up getting custody, or did it tear apart their relationship, or did it strengthen it and they did a co-parenting situation? I mean, that is such a hard situation, and I really hope they were able to figure it out, and I hope the little boy was able to grow up in a good environment, and the OP's sister was able to get clean. But who knows if the best scenario happened or if the worst scenario happened. Who knows, but I just hope everyone involved is doing better now. I abused someone when I was 18, and now I am terrified to live and be me. Strap in. This is going to be a long one. These are many confessions rather than one instance. Hello, guys. I need to write about my life, or my head will eventually explode. I am 26 male, trying to piece together what made life so subjectively intolerable to live up to this point. I've been hiding my true self and feelings for a long time now. After about 6 years of therapy, first for depression and now for addiction to adult videos and social anxiety, I found out that I deeply believe I don't deserve to get better, hence the lack of improvement in mental health. I wondered why things weren't getting better. Now I believe I know. Before you jump to conclusions such as everyone deserves to get better, I would like to list out experiences I've had, decisions I made, and actions I took so you can decide for yourself with more context. I deeply hope that this turns out useful for someone else, although I don't quite know how that should be the case. And honestly, there is a faint hope left I might be able to forgive myself and finally feel better. It is the dark reality of my life. Something more disturbing than a usual post perhaps, but here goes nothing. A quick warning. I will mention things that some may find disturbing. This text contains themes of SA, taboo, addiction, shame, and so on. Anyways, let's get into it. When I was a young kid, I couldn't sleep. I was scared. So I walked up to my parents' room and asked if I could sleep in their bed. After some back and forth, they gave in, and they allowed me to sleep in their bed. A little later, lights out and eyes closed, my parents had intimacy right beside me. I couldn't see anything, but I could feel them moving, hear the sounds. I didn't know what to make of it, but this memory stuck with me to this day. Maybe I was traumatized back then. I don't know. Anyhow, it set me on a trajectory very unfitting for a child. This trajectory looks as follows. In primary school, we had some teacher talk about intimacy for the first time. I vividly remember how fascinated I was. I was in 4th grade. Her description on how two people do it and whatever stuck with me. Maybe a bit too enthusiastic for an adult talking to kids, at least in hindsight, but it indeed was part of the curriculum. They wanted to teach us early so no one would get pregnant in high school. Around the same time, I remember my parents watching a movie. At the foot end of their bed, a TV was propped up on a box. It was a normal evening after all, and I wanted to join them in watching the movie. My parents tolerated me being there, so I watched the movie with them. It was about a brother and a sister knowingly having a romantic relationship. A weird type of drama, but I don't remember much of the film besides its premise. Looking back, it was quite inappropriate for a kid. Again, it stuck with me, and with that, an idea was born. Maybe I could try that with my sister. This idea was cemented in my brain. My sister was 2 years younger than me at the time. I remember asking my dad a day or two later, "Is it okay for a sister and a brother to marry?" He answered that it is not, and that indeed it was illegal for brother and sister to marry. I knew back then that this is not okay in some way. I started talking to my sister, telling her about this thing called intimacy and the feelings it supposedly produced. I used words not unlike to what our teachers told us about and what I took away from the movie. For weeks I talked to her, but mentioned that it was something she couldn't talk about to anyone. The manipulation by me seems shocking looking back. And then the OP gets into some gross details which I will not read, but basically they just escalate it further. And anyways, let's continue on. The OP says, a few days after this experience, some girls a little older than me came up to me at school. They called me out for what I did to my sister. They said I was disgusting and a weird creep. My secret was out. Of course, my little sister wanted to share her exciting thing with her friends, and those friends then mentioned it to their friends, and so on. The shame. Oh, the shame I felt. I hid behind bushes, got quiet in class. I usually was the troublemaker. Sat in my room at home and worried my parents would find out. I knew I would leave this school to go to secondary school early. Was a typical gifted kid, so I changed schools 2 years early, and the summer vacation was approaching. I already passed the test to get in. At a young age, I told myself, we will start a new life and no one will ever know. This is something you can never tell anyone. This left a scar on my soul I can hardly put into words, and actively I created the situation. How despicable. My parents did eventually find out. They came into my room and confronted me. I don't remember much of that day, or all the days around this time for that matter. I do remember my mom and dad talking in the kitchen afterwards. My door was open and I could hear them. My dad took the side of, kids do that sometimes. It is not talked about much, but it happens regularly. It was just plain. My mom was taking a different side. There is something seriously wrong with him. What is wrong with him? To add some context, my mom used to shame me all my life. Every time I cried at a gathering or was too loud or disrupted anyone, she would reprimand me and afterwards would say, "You're weird. Everyone was weirded out by you. They're just too polite to say to you, but I spoke to them afterwards and they couldn't believe how you acted." Now, this wasn't something rare. It was an everyday thing. I was also weird because I was best in class, so many kids treated me with disdain. I knew that most kids weren't interested in what I found fascinating, and they let me have it sometimes because of that. Even my friends sometimes bullied me, although nothing crazy. As an adult, I got diagnosed with ADHD, so you can sure believe as a kid, I wasn't the most quiet chap. I too cried easily and got angry pretty quickly. Naturally, I believed my mom was right. She knew I believed her, and she pulled that lever whenever she could. My dad was very timid but warm. Sometimes after I got scolded, he came up to me and tried to comfort me. He was an alcoholic. I remember the smell of beer and cigarettes in his breath, but at least he loved me. Somehow. So I was a weirdo, and nothing I did or said would have a positive impact to our family, despite my academic achievements, but even then, I was still a weirdo that just couldn't quite get at what was wrong with him. Even as early as very young, I concluded that my family would be better off without me. I thought I deserved to no longer be here. I tried to commit S-word. I ran away regularly, crying myself to sleep. I was so sorry for causing everyone so much distress. I ruined gatherings, did weird stuff with my sister, and even my friends knew about me in school, or so I believed when I was a kid. Subconsciously, I believe this to this day, more abstractly and more intrinsically, but still. I then started watching adult videos. Puberty was early and hit hard when it came to exploration. I've already seen the kind of softer adult videos, and after midnight, these commercials for adult videos would come up. I started watching those, and when puberty hit, I would do stuff to those. Quickly, I moved on to my computer and soon progressed to real adult videos. Every day, I watched adult videos, even when my sister was sleeping in the same room. Sometimes I'd still climb in her bed and, touch her. It sickens me to admit this. I didn't really learn from the first time, did I? That happened maybe 3 times. From that age onwards, nothing happened anymore towards my sister. What can hold a younger teen responsible for? I don't know, but it sickens me what my sister had to endure. I might have traumatized her for life. I am so incredibly sorry for what I have done. She was an innocent girl, and I poisoned her life. And things don't end here. My adult video habit stuck. I got used to watching it daily, and I got desensitized quickly. I progressed towards more sibling love themes. I even watched and did stuff to people having intimacy with animals at multiple points. It's disgusting to admit, but I'm wrestling with the reality of those decisions and experiences. I even had my dog, my family dog, lick my you-know-what. This was all during puberty. There were many interests I developed at that time. I am desperately trying to blame it on puberty, prior trauma, and the interests adult video addicts experience, but I find my past behavior so reprehensible that I cannot find peace in that explanation. And on to the last confession. I SA'd my first girlfriend. When I was around 18, I met my first girlfriend. We started getting intimate and I had a pretty inexhaustible libido. My adult video habit was running rampant too, like it has since I was young. Sometimes my girlfriend didn't want to have intimacy. I ended up doing it anyways when she was asleep. She woke up but endured. I believe this is blatant SA. R word. It happened many times. It stopped and we talked about it too. I never held her down or forced her physically. Not that that makes it anything less than R word, but I want to emphasize that detail. The sheer act of assaulting her like that is enough of a crime against humanity on its own. We talked about that phase afterwards, even when we were still together. She wasn't angry, but clearly pointed out she wouldn't tolerate such behavior anymore. That's when it stopped. How courageous of her, and how kind despite the severity of my actions. She was truly a good soul. And yet I violated a human being like that. We stayed together after that for a while. We ended up breaking up eventually, although my aforementioned actions weren't discussed as causes when we split. Maybe she moved on. Maybe it was too painful to bring up again. Today, I am terrified of people, especially of women. I have trouble buying groceries or taking the tram since the panic borders on unbearable. I can hold a job, but I cringe at myself talking to my colleagues and my need for validation. I make every single encounter intimate, men or women, friends or coworkers. Not as in taking their clothes off in my mind, but everything feels way too intimate. A hug makes me cringe because two bodies so close to each other makes me feel uncomfortable. It is so tiring. It feels like a virus in my brain. Like a parasite. I think about committing S-word from time to time still. I go to therapy and try every day to better myself, but lately, I feel tired of fighting. Maybe I blew it. This attempt at life. I work on getting this adult video thing under control and hope that maybe one day I'll have a happy family, but I don't think I deserve that. None of what I've done I would do again. I have no trouble controlling my urges, or rather, I don't have the urges. More recent relationships were emotionally troubled, but not in a manner mentioned before. I think I am in a normal adult by now. I almost feel like I am stuck with the past of someone that isn't me anymore, yet the guilt and the shame remains. I don't think I'll be able to beat my depression, anxiety, and addiction before I let go of all of that, but then again, I don't know if someone who did what I did deserves anything but ridicule. That's it for now. Thank you for your attention. If you have questions about anything, feel free to ask, and I'll be happy to answer. Edit. Comments pointed out that I left out how these things affected both my sister and my ex-girlfriend. I agree that I provided a very self-centered account, and I am ashamed that I have left them out to such an extent. I responded to many comments where the side of my sister and of my ex-girlfriend find more expression. They are victims in this, and as a perpetrator, I should have given them more attention in this post. They have to carry this weight of my wrongdoings, a fate I can hardly comprehend. I can't tell their story, and any attempt at speaking for them beyond what they personally told me would be again violating their boundaries. I edited this post many times to correct some of the language, like I think I assaulted to I assaulted, as to not downplay my actions. I also added some additional information here and there. And now let's get into some of the top comments. One user says, "Keep going to therapy. Don't come to Reddit for advice or opinions. I think most people are not qualified to give healthy or useful commentary here." And the OP replies and says, "Thank you for your comment. I learned through therapy that the internet is not real life, that most lives are filled with more regret and mistakes than is apparent just by looking at people. I'll keep going to therapy, of course. I feel like I failed at being a decent person so early in life that I blew it. I still don't believe I deserve to get better, which ironically makes therapy way more complicated. But then again, should someone like me forgive themselves? Anyhow, I appreciate the comment you left and will remind myself that Reddit is often polarizing, knowing full well my post attracts a strong reaction by some. If the truth of my life does that, so be it." Another user says, "I don't know what to say. This is really, really bad, but guilt is good. Therapy." Someone else says, "It's all a bit much, but it takes a lot of courage to talk about all that. The important thing is that you're aware of your mistakes and that you're continuing with therapy so it doesn't happen again." Someone else says, "God damn." And someone else says, "Holy crap, seek serious help and don't talk to your sister about what happened unless she brings it up. As someone who's a victim of a similar situation, if my abuser tried to talk to me about it, I would very much not be okay. You are a R-wordist. What you did to your girlfriend was R-word, and what you did to your sister was horrible. You should get into therapy right away and stay the F away from women." And the OP replies and says, "I've stayed in therapy for years now and will continue to do so. I stay in contact with my sister. I know that I will not violate her integrity by bringing this up. It is her decision, and I know that. We did talk about our childhood many times. The many bad things that happened in our family was something to not carry or digest alone. We're really close now that we are adults. I am very proud of her. I had relationships after splitting up with my first girlfriend. No problems or urges in those. I also told partners about my past too. I alluded in other comments that making things intimate doesn't mean fantasizing for me. It means that contact towards people feels too intimate for me. Even a hug or a handshake, and it makes me shy away from saying hello to people, for example. Maybe what I've done means I don't deserve to ever have a wife or a family despite having none of the tendencies I used to. I get that perspective, but since I'm a human being, I still desire those things. I will consider your perspective. Thank you for your comment." And someone else says, "Well, at least you have a working conscience. Now do better and stay away from your sister." I am a peeping Tom who recorded my friend using my toilet. To start, I've always had this interest by watching videos online. It never got so bad to the point of a few weeks ago when I decided to have my friends over to my house. After the date was set, I purchased a couple of expensive cameras to put in my bathroom. When my friends came over, I would interact with them while waiting for one of them to use the toilet. When one of my friends did, I got so excited about it. Once everyone went home, I immediately watched the video on my phone and relieved my lust. After that, I felt shame and guilt, especially because this friend is such a lovely and kind person. I know what I did is horrible and evil, but the lust just keeps coming back, and I keep watching the video over and over and over again. It has been several weeks and I still have the video. I know I should delete it, but the temptation is too strong, and I worry I would feel regret if I delete the video or if I throw away the cameras. And man, that is just disgusting, but let's get into some of the top comments. One user says, "This is a huge violation of trust and consent, and also very illegal. You need to confess to your friend and tell them what you did." And the OP replies and says, "Here's the thing. I know what I did is wrong. However, if I tell her, I fear it'll impact her a lot and also me. I won't pretend to be a saint. I would definitely be worried about my reputation too. But I don't know how to proceed with this. Therapy, I worry that it might not help me and just out me as a perv. I committed this crime. I understand the impact this would have over my victim, but the fear of it impacting my life seems higher to me. I am selfish. I wish I did not have these tendencies in the first place, simply because of the stress and fear I go through even recording it. Then the money spent on the equipment, and finally for putting my friend in this position." And then someone replies and says, "At least delete the video and don't do it again? How can you look at that friend in the eye ever again? Super gross guy." And someone else says, "F your reputation, LOL. You violated someone." And someone else says, "So you're a predator. Got it. Get help and stop abusing your victims." And someone else says, "I can definitely say that you should delete the video and rehabilitate yourself in an indoor group, so that way you can get help needed in your situation. On the other side, I'd also say that if these friends of yours are not over 18, then that just makes it worse. Whatever age you are, it is still vile regardless. Confess to your friend after you help yourself out." And the OP replies and says, "She is over 18, and I agree it is vile regardless. I am trying to muster the strength to delete the video, because the lure is very strong. I need to find a good therapist for this and hope it helps." And everyone else just says delete the video, which totally makes sense, but we don't know what the OP does because the OP's account was banned after this. But God, what a disgusting, gross, and just vile confession. "I ruined most of my life by going to prison right out of high school. In 1999, when I was 18 and fresh out of high school, I killed someone. Was eventually caught and sent to prison to serve a life sentence. In prison, I was R-worded many times, assaulted and broke multiple bones. Now, 19 and a half years later, after 19 years in prison, I'm unemployed, have severe PTSD, and have nothing but a high school diploma. I feel as if I am worthless. I can't justify myself getting treatment due to myself being a murderer, and I hate myself with passion. I'm nearly 40, and I have ruined my life. I'm halfway through to the retirement age and I have nothing. I'm broke, can't get a job due to having a record, and I have to wait 5 more years to be pardoned and have my record cleared. Edit. Thanks for all the support. For those of you wondering who I killed, it was an old high school bully that affected most of the kids in the school. Guess I thought I was being righteous or doing everyone else a favor by getting rid of him. And now let's get into some of the top comments. One user says, "I know the words of any random person over the internet won't change your life in a snap, but I'd like to tell you a story of a friend of mine who was very similar. He also killed someone and went to prison. I don't know how long he served, but when he was released, he re-met my mom. They were high school friends and made her happy during her and my stepfather's divorce, and he became my best friend too. He was the wisest person I'd ever known and was more kind than anyone I had ever met. He passed away about 4 years ago, and he left me 2 of his sweaters that he wore often. I wore them to remember how much he helped my mom get through the stress, and how he helped me through the psychological and physical abuse I got from my stepdad. So, be the best person you can be. Don't let your mistakes and your bad experiences define who you are now. If you teach others through what you have learned, you may save someone's life, like he did for me. And someone else says, shouldn't have killed someone then. No sympathy here. You're still breathing. Imagine killing someone, going to jail for it, and when you're freed, you feel bad for yourself on how your life is. Is this even real life? 18M. I use booger sugar daily, and it is absolutely destroying me. I started doing booger sugar about 7 or 8 months ago. I started off at festivals with my friends or nightclubs, but now I'm doing it daily the past 3 weeks or so. I knew from the second I used it for the first time that it was my drug of choice. I smoke weed daily, and I've used many other pills and a few others, but none ever clicked with me the same way booger sugar did. I work full time and have a good relationship with my family and friends, and I don't know where this addiction has come from. When I'm not high, I don't crave it, but the second I do a little, I can't stop. I'm doing a lot daily, sometimes more, sometimes less. It's not really affecting my life too much. I still go to work, I still see my friends, my family, and no one knows about my addiction. My biggest problem is nighttime, where I can't put down the booger sugar, and I work a manual laboring job with an early start, so it's not at all sustainable to be taking booger sugar late at night. It's currently 3 a.m. as I'm writing this, and I'm up for work in about 2 hours. I feel like I'm losing control of my life, but at the same time, I feel happy throughout the day when I'm not using, but also empty. I don't even know how to explain it. It's like 1 minute I'm inside my head thinking about how much I hate this drug and what it's doing to me and how much I want to stop. And then the next minute I'm happy, joking around, full of energy. And then I switch up again and start thinking about doing a lot when I get home. I don't know what to do. I'm using a lot a week, and if I go out to party on the weekend, I'll easily go through a ton throughout the night. I don't know what to do and how to break this addiction, or how to feel about it and how to stop justifying it, and telling myself every night that it's my last time, and then going straight back to it the next day. It's messing me up, and I'm just stuck in this vicious cycle with no way out. Thank you to everyone who took their time to read this. I'm not expecting to get anything out of it. I just needed to say it somehow, somewhere. And now let's get into some of the top comments. One user says, 18 and you've been using it daily for 3 weeks? Brother, you can kick this. Or you can destroy your heart, your nasal passages, your wallet, and eventually your relationships. Trust me on this one. And then the OP replies and says, I know how stuff like this ends. Addiction is very common in my family, mainly H. These people aren't a part of my life anymore, but all these things just don't stop me from doing it. I've thought about all the possible outcomes, none positive, and none of them will change my mind. I feel like I'm just stuck in an endless loop. And someone replies and says, seek addiction counseling if you need help. There are free phone lines you can call to. 24 hours non-judgmental. And another user says, there's a 100% chance you will stop doing booger sugar one day. Whether it's because you're dead, or because you've lost everything to addiction, or because you chose to today. That's the part that is up to you. And someone else says, honestly, just dump it and take 2 to 3 days off. Get Gatorade and plan on takeout. Tell people you have the flu. Watch movies, play video games, don't use your brain too much. Shower. You will feel so much better after some sleep. And just rest in your body and brain. You aren't too far in where it's going to take you a ton of time to bounce back. You're young too, so you have that on your side. And someone replies and says, good advice right here. I would also suggest to buy some favorite candies, splurge items, buy all those phone games you've wanted to buy, and so much sleep. Sleeping and giving your brain dopamine rewards from other things can pull a lot of people out of addiction. Sleep, distraction, sleep, eat, distraction, sleep. Addiction is so hard. And someone else says, it took me hitting rock bottom to quit. And someone replies and says, yep, same. Sadly, this is what it takes most people to realize it's a problem. Unfortunately, sometimes it's too late by then. OP, start thinking long term here. You have to get off this ride while you still can. I was up to around a lot a day at the peak of my addiction. It wasn't until I lost everything and only had my parents left by my side that I finally woke the F up and started on the path of getting clean. It's been 18 years now. Don't let it get away from you. Get it under control ASAP. And then someone else says, addiction therapist here. You're in a good frame of mind to kick this. It's just going to have to come with sacrifices from you. From your explanation here, you're recognizing a lot and identifying how much this has taken over quickly. Sooner, you can get into a comfortable frame of mind to focus on work or healthy alternatives. You can 180 here. If the cannabis helps, stick with it in moderation. Truthfully though, this can be a slippery slope quick for you. I've seen many nasal users building a tolerance, then turn to smoking it, or eventually turn to harder alternatives. Septum can deviate, then your nose is disfigured until you go to a plastic surgeon. The social aspects can be fun and you're young. I understand that. Exercise your discernment and just know there are a lot of negative consequences if you'll continue your use. Reach out to my addiction services in your community. You're legally an adult, so they will respect your privacy. All of the luck to you, lad. You got this. And we have never received another update from the OP, and I really hope that the OP was able to get the help he needed and kick this nasty addiction before it got too late, because as many people in the comment section here said, that it's a slippery slope. And if the OP doesn't get off now, it could get bad really fast. And so hopefully the OP is doing better now and just back to his regular life. I committed a felony over a bike. I have chronic anxiety and a giant fear of my dad. And also, I'm a stupid, rebellious teenager that's stupid. So one night, my friend George and I decide to take out the panel of my window and walk into town for snacks at 4 a.m. Not sure why. We crossed train tracks illegally. We hid from cop cars. It was actually quite fun. The only reason I stopped is because of the reason I'm about to tell you. So we'd done this a good 8 or 9 times, and we'd never been scared or anything. So we thought, let's bring our bikes and we can get snacks faster. And my dumbass didn't bring a lock. So we go into my garage around 2:30 a.m., bring the bikes out through the door, and just barrel down the road. I'm not gonna lie, I felt high. I was sober, and still that was such a good feeling. The brisk wind against my face in pitch black, going full speed on my bike with only streetlights guiding us. So we get to the 24-hour restaurant. For the sake of the story, we'll call it McDonald's. It was a local chain. They have a bike lock in the back, but there were some sketchy looking guys. In retrospect, they're nice guys, I met them later, and me, being the world's biggest idiot, decided to park our bikes out back of a piano store in the single sketchiest alleyway that I have ever seen. So we get our food, whatever. I think the lady thought we were homeless because she gave us free hash browns. Anyways, we get back to the alleyway, and I can't find my bike. So I turn on my iPhone flashlight and point it at my feet. And I swear to God, I have never been more scared in my entire life. The bike was gone. My friend's was still there, but mine was gone. The thief had replaced it with their own, effed up garbage bike that I rode home. So my friend and I went home, and I somehow got to sleep. The next morning, I rode that hunk of junk all the way back into town, and you know what I did? I purposefully fell over, covered myself in dirt and blood, and called my mom. To make it a long story short, I told her that I basically just got grand theft biked and some older dudes jacked our bike. She arrives on scene, calls the police, calls my dad. Dad comes, drives my brother around to see if they can find the little assholes. Policeman takes both me and my friend to make sure our story checks out. Somewhere on this planet, there is a tape recording me confessing to a crime that didn't happen. Somehow, we both kept our story perfect. I filed a false police report. Felony. I have no idea how I wasn't caught. But it still haunts me to this very day. I sabotaged my uncle's life, and now he has nothing. He is a terrible person in general. He is manipulative, abusive, causes family drama, steals from family and friends to feed his drug and escort addiction, and has destroyed property as an intimidation tactic to keep people under his control. I've recently learned that he is severely physically and mentally abusive towards his son and his girlfriend. I called his employer and tipped them off to his drug habits. He lost his job after failing a drug test. I told his girlfriend's family about his physical abuse. They came and got physical revenge and took her back with them. I called CPS anonymously and told them about his relationship with his son. The child has been taken into custody by the state. I heard his girlfriend is gathering evidence to press charges against him. Soon, his freedom will be gone too. And I feel horribly guilty. I destroyed a man's life. What was once righteous is now crippling shame and self-resentment. I'm no better than him. I hurt people too. And now let's get into some of the top comments. One user says, "You didn't destroy his life. He did it himself. Addiction is a disease, but choices are made by us. He could have chosen to get help, stop, or simply don't be violent. He is responsible for his decisions. You just simply brought him to justice faster and possibly saved 2 lives. If anything, you did a really hard task. It's not easy reporting a family member like that. He will more than likely sober up in custody and realize how bad he messed up. If he will change, I don't know. Probably not. But he will sober up in jail, more than likely, and that's already a step to get him help." Someone else says, "You are different than him. You hurt him, but you did it in order to save people from his abuse. Protecting innocent people justifies causing that harm. His abuse was not justified. He did not do those awful things for anyone but himself. You saved people." And someone else says, "He destroyed his own life with his abusive tendencies and bad decisions. Maybe this will be his rock bottom, and it'll turn his life around." My mom has paranoid schizophrenia. I sometimes enjoy using her irrational paranoia to torment her. I do feel bad, but sometimes I cannot help myself. I am 31 years old now. and have been her main caregiver since she became ill when I was very young. I won't lie, my life is an utter waste and I am utterly unsuccessful in career, money, relationships, and health, including my own mental health. Her delusions, which were not treated for many years, formed my childhood and instilled in me unhealthy habits and traits, which I cannot be bothered to go into right now. Being a carer for a parent alone for many years has also not been very good in terms of jobs. So much so that I've spent a lot of time in part-time flex jobs, for example, call center jobs. I do love my mom, but I am so resentful of her. But sometimes it overwhelms me. I end up lashing out passively aggressively. One of the main delusions she has is that people and family place curses on her. This evening, she started talking about it, and I got more and more annoyed that I accused her of putting curses on me. She kept saying she would never do that, but I kept going on and on accusing her of it. I couldn't stop. She just cried and left the room, and I felt nothing. I was just glad I could carry on watching TV in peace. There are so many examples that, at the time, I enjoy and get pleasure from, but then after I feel so ashamed. I am otherwise a good carer and look after her and make sure her needs are met, not just physically or financially, but emotionally and socially. The pressure is just too much sometimes. And alright guys, that wraps up some unnerving confession threads, and I hope you found today's video interesting. If you did, please comment down below. I appreciate every single comment and I read every single comment. So comment down below your feedback, criticisms, thoughts, concerns, ways I can improve the videos, etc. I really do appreciate all of the comments. And also make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel. It really does help so much and helps me make more videos like this. And so I appreciate the support. It truly does mean the world. And finally, thank you guys so much for watching. Your guys' support means the world. And I mean, if you're still watching, you're just amazing. I mean, like, your guys' support is so crazy to me. And you guys are the best. And yeah, once again, thank you guys so much for watching. And if you enjoyed this video, I'm sure you'll enjoy some other videos on the channel. So go check out some other videos on the channel. And all right. Thank you guys so much for watching, and this was Snook, and I'll see you next time. Bye. Hey, what's up guys, and welcome back to the channel, and today we're getting into some unnerving Reddit horror stories. You guys have been loving the Reddit horror stories, and I have loved recording them. I love these long story videos. They're so entertaining, scary, weird, and like the title says, unnerving, so these stories will be great and you'll want to stick around. And I just want to say thank you so much for stopping by. It means the world. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel, follow me on Instagram, follow me on Spotify, and like and subscribe here, like I said. And yeah, this video will be long enough already. So without further ado, let's get into some unnerving Reddit horror stories. The Lady Upstairs, written by LooseAd723. After 36 years of living in an apartment complex, I can confidently attest that a night owl is the worst kind of neighbor. Being as lucky as I am, I had one of those moving into the apartment right above mine at the start of October. It was a lady who seemed to have an endless supply of worldly goods that all needed to be put into place the moment she moved in. Every single evening, at 9 p.m. exactly, she would either start hammering away, drilling the walls, or pushing furniture across her floors, always managing to reach the noise level of an angry bull in heat. I have always had quite sensitive ears, so I'm no stranger to being awoken at night because of bothersome noises. There is always noise in the city, whether from drunkards singing at the top of their lungs or nocturnal critters running amok in the streets. Trust me, the sheer number of times I've been woken up by an opossum knocking over a trash can outside my house is ridiculous. The thing is, these disturbances would always be occasional and brief whenever they occurred. I could easily fall back asleep afterwards, but ever since the day that lady moved in, the night has been filled with constant sounds of her mayhem. The cacophony upstairs would go on every evening for about 3 to 4 days in a row. Then at some point, I would hear a large thudding sound, indicating that she had brought out yet another box full of stuff that needed to be set up. This routine sent me into a hellish cycle of exhaustion. I'd fall asleep late and wake up exhausted in the morning. I would then have to drown myself in coffee and go to work, hoping that I could get some sleep later in the evening. Don't tell me that I just should have confronted her. I didn't want her to think I was just some cranky old man. Besides, I don't really like confronting people. I've always felt awful whenever I've had to reprimand someone. I also didn't know her name, which I felt like would have made the interaction even more unbearable. I just sat on my couch, waiting for the commotion to stop. Suddenly, 3 weeks had passed, and she showed no signs of being finished unpacking. The seeds of chaos were planted as the clock struck 9 p.m. on an unusually hot evening in late October. An evening so hot that I had to have my windows open to be comfortable. The lady upstairs started toiling away, following her usual schedule. It was just as loud as all the other days. I twisted and turned in my bed, trying to cover my ears with my pillow, as I had done so many nights before. But this night was different. The heat mixed with my drowsiness and the sounds from upstairs all compiled into a thundering migraine. It felt as if my brain was swelling, trying to crack my head open and run away to escape the noise. I couldn't take it any longer. I sat up in my bed, inhaled all the air that I could fit in my lungs, and yelled, "Quiet!" My yelling was followed by a large thud from upstairs. She had just started unpacking another box. I thought to myself, I couldn't believe it. She had to have heard me. My yelling was so loud that they probably heard me all the way up on the 5th floor. I stared at my ceiling, awaiting the sounds of the troublemaker and her orchestra from hell. I waited, and then I waited some more. More time passed, but there were no more sounds coming from upstairs. Maybe she did hear me. Maybe she was finally being respectful. I felt my headache subside as I lay back down. I closed my eyes, letting my fatigue carry me towards slumber. I was completely unbothered for the first time in a long time. I rose with the sun several hours later, and I didn't have to chug half a liter of coffee to stay awake. I went to work with a smile on my face and a good feeling in my body. Everything was easier. I was happier. It was paradise compared to before. I came home that evening, hoping that the night before wasn't an exception. If only I had been that lucky. After the sun had gone down, there was activity in the upstairs apartment again. This time, though, the sounds were a bit different. All I could hear was bump, 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 repeated over and over again. I couldn't place the sound. It didn't come from any tool that I know of. I was sure of that. There were irregular pauses between the sounds, ranging from about 5 seconds to 10 seconds. It wasn't just heavy footsteps, that was for sure. The spaces between them were too big. It wasn't a hammer either. The sounds were much too quiet for that. This thought process continued as I lay in my bed that night, my wary eyes fixated on the ceiling. Maybe she's tapping her foot on the floor to a song, but the sounds are not rhythmical in the slightest. Maybe she's dropping a ball repeatedly, but why would she even do that? Is she a juggler? No, that'd be ridiculous. These were but some of the thoughts rushing through my head as the sounds kept resonating in the background. It was beyond the midnight hours before I fell asleep that night. When I woke up in the morning, the noises had stopped. I assumed that she had just started working on her apartment again. Throughout the whole day, at my work and when I went home, I silently prayed that I wouldn't hear those sounds from her apartment again, even though they were less noisy than normal. There was something about not being able to identify them that just made them much more annoying. To my dismay, however, the noises had begun anew by the rising of the moon. Bump, bump, bump. Lying in my bed that night, I was gritting my teeth out of sheer annoyance. I covered my head with my pillow again, but it was no use. I could still hear the sounds no matter how much I tried to keep them out. They made me feel as if someone was constantly poking at my brain, molding it like a piece of clay. Maybe it was revenge. Maybe, just maybe, she was mad about my yelling and was doing this to get back at me. Maybe she just wanted to drive me nuts with her antics. I tried to fall asleep, but it wasn't happening. The sounds from upstairs echoed in my head, much louder than any of the sounds that had been there in the weeks before. It was pure agony. My heart skipped a beat as my phone started ringing. I cautiously picked it up, wondering who was calling in the middle of the night. Hello? I mumbled. Peterson, where the fuck are you, man? We've been waiting for you for 45 minutes. Oh, hello, sir. I'm sorry, but my shift doesn't start till... I looked towards my window. The rays of sunlight had already broken through and cast light onto my floor. Shit. Sorry, sir. I'll be there in 15 minutes. I said as I got out of bed and hung up the phone. What followed was one of the worst days I've ever had in my life. I was a walking corpse with only one thing on my mind. What were those sounds? I eventually got home and I didn't care about relaxing. Relaxation wasn't even on my mind. All I wanted to do and all I did was await the sounds. I sat on my couch, staring at the ceiling, and like clockwork, the commotion started back up late into the evening. Bump, bump, bump. I couldn't take it another night. It was torture. I didn't care what she thought of me anymore. I didn't care about having to scold her. I stormed out of the door and up the stairs and pounded on the door. What is your fucking problem? The sound stopped, but I wasn't satisfied. They were going to start again. I wasn't fooled. I turned the door handle and walked inside. Her apartment was cold like night and as silent as a library. I walked into the living room, and that's where I found her. She was lying on her back at the foot of a small stepladder. She lay beside the corner of a wooden table. The corner was covered in a mixture of dried brown blood and long black hairs. On the side of her head was a crater of blood, hair, skull fragments, and brain matter. Both of her arms were mangled to the bone. A swarm of flies was nesting on her body. The windows in the living room stood open, taking in the autumn breeze and wafting away any smell of rot there should have been. As I stood there, taking it all in, I heard some skittering. I stared in disbelief as a chubby little form crept out from one of the moving crates on the floor, where it had likely been hiding from all the noise I'd made. It was a possum, currently unaware of my presence. It crawled over the body and started gnawing at the hand. Every time the possum ripped off a piece of flesh, the hand was lifted into the air before subsequently dropping to the floor, producing a light bump. I haven't slept since 2023. Written by Sad or Dead. He writes great stories on Reddit, so go check out his page. And now into the story. Growing up, I had two choices in life. I could follow in my father's footsteps as a farm equipment maintenance worker. It was a decent job with decent pay, but I always got this sense of dread whenever I walked by his workshop. It was this big, windowless building in a pale green color, and I always had this feeling that if I stayed there for too long, that place would eat me alive. So I went with the other choice in life, my mother. She was always larger than life, and she wanted me to be too. She was all about the hustle. When she and my father went separate ways, she took me and my sister across the country to Bangkok. She was the embodiment of Ot Prio Wa Kin Wan, roughly translated to endure the sourness and enjoy the sweetness later. She would take any job at any time and claw her way upward. So my sister and I turned out the same. We would work, study, and socialize. We were supposed to be everything at once: smart, strong, cultural, and opinionated. I studied computer science at night and worked delivery during the day. I got a pretty good eye for traffic, so I could make it around the city without fearing for my life. That's easier said than done. Traffic laws around here seem to be more of a suggestion rather than a law. I also did the odd job making websites for friends, family, and acquaintances. That would eat up most of my weekend nights. And finally, the one job that never paid me anything: looking out for my sister. My sister Isra worked as a club and event promoter in the inner city. She mostly worked weekends and nights, and I'm the only one she trusts to watch her back. If someone bothered her, I'd be on call. If she needed a sudden ride home, I'd be on call. I'd get yelled at for being late, or for not responding fast enough, or for 1,000 different reasons. It was by far the worst job I'd ever had. But family is family. I'd be working so much that the only time my friends would see me was when I came around to pick up Asura. They started to call me Lon or Lurk, something you would say when it's time to close for the night. I was the closing time guy. When I showed up, it was time to go home. Not the most fun nickname to be stuck with in your early 20s. When my mother passed away from pancreatic cancer in 2020, I'd just turned 21. I was put in a position where I had to support both myself and my sister economically. Sure, she pulled part of her weight too, but she was looking ahead. She wanted to work in cosmetology, especially in movies and TV shows. That would take money and time. So for a while there, I had a lot of sudden weight put on my shoulders. Studies, work, more work, and being there for Isra. I barely slept, and when I did, I'd wake up at the slightest sound. I was so used to sleeping lightly, waiting for my sister to call for a pickup, but I didn't have a lot of choices. I had to keep going, for everyone's sake. So I made a plan. I just had to make it until I was done with my studies. I looked for temporary solutions. I'd take caffeine pills, but they ended up giving me a stomach ache. I tried this dextrose drink from a local pharmacy, but that thing almost gave me arrhythmia. I didn't want to try any heavier stuff, so I kind of gave up hope. Then I met a guy named Samyat. Samyat is a nice guy in the wrong kind of business. About 10 years older than me, but 30 years older at heart. To this day, I'm not sure what he really does, apart from co-managing a couple of downtown clubs. I think he buys things from places you shouldn't. Some kind of gray area importer. He was a part owner of a club where Isra worked on the weekend. The first time I met him, he was sitting outside the club with a cold beer, having a cigarette. He didn't look like the owner, so I sat down next to him to tie my shoe. He looked me up and down. "You just gonna sit down like that?" he asked. "You got an appointment?" "I need an appointment for a chair?" "For my chair, yeah." "You the boss?" "I'm a boss, yeah." I was too tired to care, and frankly, getting my sister fired from that place would have made my life easier, so I looked right back at him. "You don't look like a boss to me." I didn't know if he was gonna hit me or hire me, but he ended up belly laughing and offering me a cigarette, so I guess I made the right choice. I would spend about 1 or 2 nights a week at Samyat's club. He'd offer me a job, but the pay was awful, and I was busy with other things. I literally didn't have enough hours of the day to work for him. I think that was for the best, though. He was a great guy to hang out with, but he must have been an awful boss. Cheap bastard. Samyat had some sympathy for me, though. I was working hard to make ends meet, and he respected the hustle. He offered me a couple of side gigs. For example, picking up leftover credit cards at ATMs. There's a kind of ATM that takes a long time for the card to come back out, so a lot of tourists think it ate them, so they leave the card behind. Samyat paid a little for each card I could bring him, so I would walk around and pick them up while waiting for Isra to finish work. Every little bit helps. We developed a good friendship. I would show up an hour or so before Isra needed to pick up just to hang out with Samyat. We'd usually talk just about movies, cars, girls, whatever came to mind. I didn't have a lot of people in my life I could just talk to about nothing. And I didn't think he did either. We'd usually end up having a beer and chew beetle nuts. They're these nuts that wrap in a leaf and chew. It gives you a pick-me-up that makes your mouth burn. It sums up Samyat pretty well. Legal, but spicy. But things took a turn when I was invited to a private party of his. See, I'd been up for 27 hours straight at that point. I've been working on a large project for my computer science class, and I've been hoping to get a couple of extra hours in at the delivery company. That, and a client needed me to redo their homepage after it got hacked. It was a perfect storm of a lot of little things all at once, and it drove me to exhaustion. But I still got to Samyat's party. He had a nice place outside of town. He'd invited some people from the club and some business associates. He had these parties about once every 6 months or so. It was a way to show appreciation and brag a little. Still, Samyat had pulled out all the stops. He'd felt sorry for me, seen me work so hard, and he'd brought a guy there from a research institute. They needed people for a data entry job, and he thought it'd be my kind of thing. Problem is, I was so tired I looked like I was on drugs. I didn't even understand the guy was offering me a paid position. As the party died down, Samyat took me aside and sat me down for a chat. We chewed some beetle nuts and he took off his sunglasses. The man didn't look me in the eyes a lot, so I knew something was up. "I worry about you," he said. "You're working too hard." I'm sorry," I said. "It's not that I don't appreciate this, but I just had so much to do." "Then tell me," he continued. "Tell me how I can help." "You don't need to do anything," I said. "I'm just glad to have a friend, you know?" I could see the wheels turn in his head. His eyes welled up a little. He gave me a hug and took me out of the veranda overlooking the city. He patted me on the back. "You deserve better," he said. "I'll get you something better." The following weekend, I got a text from Samyat. He was excited to show me something. He usually had something to share, but this time seemed different. I was a bit anxious about seeing him, but it was a nice change of pace. So that Saturday, I was invited into the club. I went straight past the bouncer, through the dance floor, and into the back rooms. From there, I followed a corridor to a small office at the back of the building. After all I'd seen from Samyat, I expected something grander, but it was just a little office with an old laptop, a USB fan, a couple chairs, and a shitty TV in the corner, all accentuated by a couple of early 2000s posters of women in bikinis posing with cars. Samyat was smiling ear to ear and waved me over. He opened a safe under his desk and pulled out a small box of white pill bottles. They were all sealed and unmarked, except for a small blue sunflower print on the cap. He sat me down and took a bottle out of his pocket to show me. "This is gonna help," he said. "Trust me." I don't do drugs, boss." "I know you don't. This isn't that." He showed me his phone and a conversation he'd had with the guy from the party, the one from the Research Institute. Apparently, he'd managed to get his hands on a couple of cases of an off-market stimulant. "I tried it myself," he said. "Going on 2 weeks now. It's a little miracle." "What does it do? What's the catch?" "No need to sleep anymore," he smiled. "1 pill, you're good to go for at least 18 hours. "No way." "You might need another hour or so to recover when you finally go to bed, but apart from that, it's perfect. Doesn't make your piss smell, doesn't fuck up your hair, nothing." "No way," I repeated. Too good to be true. Samyat sat down at his desk across from me, giving me a long look. "You won't let me get you a better job," he said. "Let me get you this, as a friend." I could tell he was being genuine. You could say a lot about Samyat, but he'd always been honest with me. I swallowed my fears and picked up one of the pills. I don't know," I said. "There's got to be a catch." "Never more than 1 a day," he said, "or you'll get sick. And no more than 2 days at a time, maybe 3, but then you'll probably get a headache. Oh, and no drugs." "What do you mean?" "There's a list of things drugs it reacts with, but you don't do that stuff, so you're good." "What about caffeine?" "As long as you don't pour stuff like..." Samyat picked up a small piece of paper and looked it over, reading from the list, and then a bunch of different hard drugs, crystal, booger sugar, etc. "There goes my Friday night." "Funny," Samyat scoffed. "If you don't want it, it's fine, but..." No, I'll try one." And so I did. Taking that first pill was like breathing in after a deep dive. I felt lighter, but not high. I was just well rested, ready to take on the day. but there was also a slight chill to it, like a cold breath sweeping across my nerves. I looked at Samyat like I was seeing him for the first time. He got up and slapped his hands together with a grin. "I knew it," he said. "I knew this would be it." "How much?" I asked. "For a bottle, how much?" "Take it," he smiled, pushing over the whole case. Guy owed me a favor. "Really? You're giving it away?" I'm just glad to have a friend. That night was the first time I stuck around to party with Samyat. For real. The man was a force of nature. He downed shots like they were water. He knew all the best food vendors on the block by name, and he'd ping-pong from after party to after party without breaking a sweat. I was just along for the ride. We ended up drunk on a beach, watching the sunrise. Not a blink of tiredness in our eyes. Our day was just getting started. No need for beetle nuts to keep us going. I wouldn't need those ever again. "Next, you're gonna get a woman," he murmured. "Then a job, a great job. You can fix anything, huh? That's why I'm the boss." "No, I don't want to owe you anything," I said. "You get that, right?" "You don't owe me anything." Kind of feels like I do. He asked me to show him the phone. I did. And he scrolled down to his number on the contact list. He tapped it, hovering his finger over the delete button. "You can delete me today and never call me again. And that's up to you." Really? Really. He handed me the phone back and turned his attention to the sun. "But for as long as you feel like it, I'm here," he continued. "No strings." "No strings?" He shrugged and slid his final beer my way. It's just nice to be the good guy for once. The next day, lying in my bed, I was scared. I had no idea how my body would respond. It was a make or break moment where I'd find out if Samyat had screwed me over, or if he'd really helped me out. I had a whole case of those pills stashed away in the closet. More than enough to keep me going for months. But I took his advice. Every 2 or 3 days or so, I'd give it a rest. So when I went to sleep that night, I didn't know what to expect. I had strange dreams. I dreamt I woke up in this barren world with a dead tree towering in the distance. There were no stars in the sky. It was desolate, but peaceful in a way. And I dreamt that there was someone there, in the dark. Someone looking for me. But I woke up long before they found me. I was a bit worked up, but it was just a dream. Those fleeting images rolled out of my mind faster than it took me to make breakfast. From that moment on, I decided to give these things a go. I would rest every 3 days or so, but until then, I was constantly on the go. I could work as many hours as I wanted. I could be up all night finishing projects left and right. I never missed a call from Asira. I could keep up with demands, and I could do it comfortable, without side effects. Sure, whenever I crashed, I'd dream about that place again. The dead tree, reaching for the moon, the desolate ruins, and somewhere out in the eternal night, something was looking for me, but it never had the time to find me. I'd always wake up long before it did. It was comfortable, efficient, and I could do it all. I had time to work a little with Samyat. Not anything big, but just little odd jobs here and there. He was fair, but didn't pay much. But then again, I was making more money than I knew how to spend. I got a second chance at an interview with Samyat's guy at the Research Institute, and that time around, I nailed it. It was just a low-level data entry job, but I could do it remotely, and it paid almost twice as much as my delivery job. I had to brush up on my English, but that wasn't a big deal. Isra and I had to learn it early on in our lives. My mother made sure of it. Isra had saved up enough money for her cosmetology classes, so I got some more time to focus on other things. I invested some time in a startup app with some guys from my classes, and we made some solid progress. Overall, things looked pretty good. Weeks turned into months, and months eventually turned into an entire year. I still had plenty of pills left, and I got into a healthy routine. I slept better, I ate better, and I had so much more time on my hands. It got to the point where I couldn't imagine going back to life without those pills. Still, I couldn't help but wonder what that place in between the wakeful world and my dreams was. That place in the starless night with the dead tree in the distance. Who were the dark shapes roaming the fields of black sand, and who was out there looking at me? I wouldn't think about it too much. I chalked it up as a weird side effect, but not much else. It didn't affect my everyday life, so why should I care? Fast forward to 2023. I was co-owner of a small company. No more data entry. We had an office and 5 employees. My nickname still stuck around, but it was more or less sarcastic. I was no longer the guy who showed up at the end of it all. I was the first in line. I would plan my come downs in a way that people never noticed. I had this reputation of working around the clock, and people just couldn't figure it out. I didn't share my secret with anyone. I figured there'd be some serious consequences if those pills got in the wrong hands. My sister worked a nice job at one of the local malls. One of the really big ones. Not just any old mall. It was very well paid. And she could support herself more than enough. She ended up moving in with a guy, and I got a place of my own. I could finally take a step up and get myself something nice. I still spend time with Samyat. He was the only other person in the world that knew of the pills. He'd stopped taking them though. He found them too distracting when it came to keeping a schedule. He was going steady with a lady named Wan Wan, and he hated seeing her go to bed on her own. It was surprisingly sweet. And more pills for me, so win-win. In February of 2023, my sister got married. It was bad timing since I had a huge project to work on at the time. So even with all my available time, it was still not enough. So I had to do something Samyat advised against. I had to keep going for 5 days straight. Just 2 days more than the ordinary 3, but still. Now I didn't immediately notice anything. It worked just fine. But when I finally crashed, after almost a full week without sleep, I had the most awful nightmares of my life. Not only was I back there, in that desolate space, I could feel it. The black sand creeping into my shoes. The howling of people in pain. I thought I heard gunfire too. What little vegetation lived there was twisted into a midnight blue, just like the blue sunflower on the cap of the bottle. But this time, there wasn't just something in the dark looking for me. No, it was hunting. I have this vivid memory of crawling through the sands of an old ruin, hearing something closing in. Despite the sand, it was wet, vicious. It made this disgusting sound, like a crowd of large men struggling for breath all at once. I would hear it touch its way across the ruins, looking for me, and everywhere it touched, something sizzled, like burning acid. It tried to speak. I know it did, but it couldn't. It had too many tongues, and they all tried to speak at once. Eventually, it found me. I couldn't look. I couldn't breathe. I could feel the size of it without even looking as it loomed over me. I tried making myself small, but it didn't matter. It sighed, like it had enjoyed a cold glass of water on a warm summer's day. It was so pleased to find me. And as it moved closer, I heard something dripping, sizzling into the sand. There was a powerful smell of ammonia and something akin to mothballs. It touched my arm, and it burned into my skin. It burned so bad that I woke up. And when I did, I had a burn. A coin-sized black mark with gangrenous flesh tightening the skin of the arm, stinging with every flex of my tricep. That place was real. That thing had to be real. For a full week after that, I kept feeling like I'd been seconds from death. I had a doctor check out my arm, but he couldn't make sense of it. It was an acid burn, but it behaved like a frostbite. In the end, he had to make a small procedure to remove the dead skin, but it was overall fine. I just had to keep it clean and bandaged and be prepared for a nasty scar. But that thing had been so vivid. Days later, I could still smell it. I remember this one time when I was taking a shower, when I had to turn off the water. I thought I heard something sizzling in the other room. Wrapped in a towel, I peeked through the door, hoping against hope that I was just being paranoid. This time, I was, but what about next time? I swore off the pills. I was in a good place and I didn't need them anymore. I'd gained everything I wanted. Sure, it'd take some time to get back to a normal schedule, but I couldn't go back there. No wonder we weren't supposed to take more than 2 or 3 pills in a sequence. If I'd been there a second longer, it would have taken my whole arm. Another hour and I'd be dead. I decided to give it all back to Samyat. By that time, he had expanded his business a bit, but he'd calmed down as a person. He was a changed man. He was engaged to Wanwan, and he was trying to turn his life around. In fact, we hadn't seen each other for some time. He was a bit surprised when I called about meeting him in his office. I met Samyat in his downtown office late one Friday night. It was a strange feeling. There were people everywhere, but I still felt like I was alone. There was this thought crawling around in the back of my head, whispering to me that if I slowed down and really listened, I could hear that sizzling acid as it burned into the asphalt. So I kept my head down and tried to get into the music, the bass, the beat of the party, but it was all just superficial. I couldn't help but think back on that thing. Every time I heard a cough, a sneeze, someone clearing their throat, I thought that was it. It found me. I could feel the squelch of it in my ear, almost like a heat. But I made my way through the club and joined Samyat in his office. I put the pills on his desk and sat down across from him. "I'm done with them," I said. "They do something to you?" he asked. "Yeah," I said. I'm just done." "All right, no worries," Samyat nodded. "You okay?" "Not really." Despite not hanging out for a while, Samyat was his usual self. He put the pills away, sat down next to me, and handed me a beer. He'd installed a mini fridge next to his desk. The damn thing made more noise than a ceiling fan. "I'm not gonna ask about it," he said. "You look like shit. I feel like shit. What happened to your arm?" "Frostbite." Samyat snorted but saw that I wasn't laughing. He opened his mouth but closed it again. Whatever had happened to me, he knew better than to laugh. Instead, he leaned over, looking worried. "Fuck the pills," he said. "You're sticking with me now, all right?" "All right." He made his best effort to keep me company that night. We had drinks, met some people, and sang some karaoke. I almost got into an arm wrestling competition with a drunk Dutch guy. It was nice, and for a moment, I didn't hear those awful noises. I didn't smell those awful smells. Later that night, I could feel myself growing tired. Usually, I would just pop one of the pills, but I settled for a classic instead. Beetle nuts. Samyat and I wrapped them up and bit down. It was nice to feel that familiar crunch and burn. It was a return to form in a way. It was the way things were supposed to be. By the end of the night, we ended up on that same bench, watching the sun. But this time, he was exhausted. He was nodding off over and over as he waited for a friend to pick him up. I was, strangely, not tired in the slightest. "Maybe you still got some of it in your system," Samyat mumbled. "Makes sense, right? I mean, bigger doses, take longer." "Probably," I nodded. "Or maybe it was the nuts." "Nah, they don't work like that. They're a kick, not a trip." By the time Samyat's friend came around to pick him up, he could barely keep his eyes open. He lumbered into the passenger seat and looked back at me one final time. "I'm getting rid of them," he said. "Don't worry, it's done. You'll be fine." But I wasn't feeling fine. Or rather, I was, but that was the problem. I went home and I still couldn't sleep. I went an entire day and I still couldn't sleep. I hadn't taken any pills for some time, but I was still up and about. I was getting worried, but I didn't know where to turn. Had I taken a pill by accident? I reached out to Samyat's contact at the Research Institute, but we couldn't talk about it over email since it was monitored, and this was hardly legal, so we decided to meet downtown later in the week. For the next few days, I was a wreck. I kept thinking about that place and that thing. I'd been up for so many days that I didn't want to think about what would happen when I returned. It would be waiting for me. I could feel it. Hear it. I met the man from the Research Institutes in early morning. I paid for his coffee, but I didn't get any myself. He was an American in his 50s with a shaved head and a well-trimmed goatee. He hid behind a black baseball cap and wasn't much for small talk. I decided to get right to it. I explained the problem. After taking a larger than usual dose, I couldn't sleep anymore. He didn't look that surprised. That only happens when you take stimulants, he said. Didn't he warn you? I haven't taken anything, I said. I don't do drugs. You sure? He asked. Nothing. Does alcohol count? I asked. Beetle nuts, caffeine? What? No, that... He stopped for a second. His eyes turned away as he thought about it. He brought out his phone and checked something, then nodded. Beetle nuts, he nodded. That's high in arcoline. High in what? Arcoline. That's the first thing on the list. That's the worst one. Wait, what? He adjusted his glasses and read the list out loud. He was right. Arcoline was the first thing on the list, right there next to hard narcotics. What does it mean? I asked. What's going to happen? He leaned forward, looking over the edge of his silver-rimmed glasses. Arcoline amplifies the effect by a magnitude of about 100. It's one of the reasons they had to shut down the development. At that magnitude, there's no telling what's going to happen. Wait, 100? So you're going to be awake for maybe a year, maybe 4. And then something I can't even imagine is going to happen to you. There was nothing else to say. He had no advice to give. There were no solutions. The damage was done. I almost burst into tears right then and there. My hands were shaking. I would be awake for years and then something he couldn't even imagine. If the effect of 2 pills, too many, caught me a burn on the arm, what the hell was going to happen after 100, 200? The bandage itched and I could hear the sizzling from a nearby kitchen. But it wasn't from the kitchen. It was that thing. And it was waiting for me. It was just a matter of time. I tried everything, but there was nothing to be done. There was nothing wrong with me on paper. I was healthier than ever, in fact. The lab in Vietnam that the man spoke of had been shut down, and all traces of it was dismantled. I had a vague lead to an investor in the US, but it didn't lead me anywhere. I had to sell my share in my company. It stung, but the payout was more than generous. It would keep me afloat for a couple of months, maybe a year, while I tried to work something out. But it was a desperate search for nothing. Even the man from the research institute would drop off the grid. And when strange men in suits started asking my friends and family about me, I knew I'd taken a step too far. This was in February 2023. Every day from that point forward has been a nightmare. In May that same year, I lost the need to eat. It's like my body entered a kind of metastasis. I could sit in a room for days on end, staring at a wall, and nothing would change. I would feel nothing. I would experience nothing, and I wouldn't care. And with no food, I need no bathroom breaks. Sometime in July, I lost the need to breathe. I'd forget to do it for days on end, and my lungs would deflate to the point where it hurt to use them. After a couple of weeks, I couldn't talk without bleeding anymore. In late October that year, I stopped blinking. I'd forget to do it for long periods of time, and dust would settle in my eyes. It didn't hurt, but it was uncomfortable to wash them, so I just ended up keeping them closed. Something happened to my skin. I think it stopped needing sunlight. Over a couple of days, I grew so pale you could almost see through me. My fingernails would fall off without using my mouth and jaw. My teeth fell out of my skull. I barely noticed. I had to move in with my sister to care for me. She couldn't understand what was happening, and neither could anyone else. She would force me to go to the doctors, and they couldn't make sense of it. Whenever they mentioned specialist, some anonymous group would throw enough money at them to look the other way. But all that was just cake topping. It was all just physical things. It didn't compare to my thoughts and feelings. I'd feel closer and closer to that dark space. That space beyond, where that thing waited for me. It hungered for me. All the needs and wants I'd lost, it gained. It was hungry, tired, sunburnt, and in constant pain, and it wanted to give it all back to me. to consume me with it. If I just listened hard enough, I could hear it panting, like an eager dog waiting for master to put food in his bowl, ready to tear into me, unashamed. Sometimes I forget what world I'm in. I'll get up and wander around, feeling the walls, imagining them as crumbling ruins. My sister once caught me wandering into the street. If my lungs had worked, she would have heard me begging that thing to leave me. Instead, I got hit by a car, and I didn't feel a thing. Laying crumpled into a pile by the side of the road. The things people say feel like a distant dream. I have no need for serotonin, so joy is something of the past. Sometimes I can hear the music and cheering across the city, but it feels like they're mocking me. But the fear, that's still there. It may be the only emotion that remains. Now it's 2025. I think I attended Samyat's wedding, but I can't know for sure. I think I was there. I didn't see or hear. I can't feel anything when I move my arms anymore. There was a nice smell. I think he offered me some cake. I tried to smile at him, but I don't know if I did it. I've written this with great effort over several weeks. My sister has helped. She washes my eyes, and I'll look at the letters for her to type. If I stretch a little, I can get enough air in my lungs to make a noise or a short word. Sometimes at night, when my sister is not here, I think I can hear something outside. Not just in my mind, but on the street. I think they're watching me. I think they're curious about what happens when I go to sleep. Or maybe they're scared. It's funny in a way. They called me Lurk. Closing time. It's fitting. I can't help but think I should have stayed with my father, maintaining farm equipment. I wish I could dream of seeing those pale green walls again. I had to finish this in a hurry. I think the effect is wearing off, like the man said it would. Yesterday, I yawned. Today, I'm tired. Good night, Bangkok. The Worth of a Life by Rain. What would it take for you to kill a man? Excuse me? I asked, taken off guard. A stranger in an expensive-looking suit sat across from me at the bus stop. What would it take for you to kill a man? He repeated. Why are you asking me this? I asked, increasingly unsettled. He leaned back against the bench casually, as if he were simply asking for the time. Because I want to know, David, he said, his face expressionless. How do you know my name? I asked, a chill running through me. This was getting creepy. Who are you? The stranger leaned forward and looked me in the eye. His stare was cold and unwavering. I know everything about you, David, he said, not offering his own name. I know that you are drowning in student loans. They had to sell your car, that you live from one meager paycheck to the next. He leaned back and looked away. I want to know what it would take for you to kill a man, he finished. This guy was seriously freaking me out, and I wanted to run or call the police, but I was afraid of what he might do. He was obviously some kind of psychopath. I decided to humor him carefully until the bus came, just in case. Why would I ever kill someone? I asked. Aside from self-defense, I don't see how that could ever be worth it. You have a gun, and someone is kneeling in front of you, he said. What if pulling that trigger would save 1,000,000 lives? Would you do it? A psychopathic philosopher? So, the trolley problem? I asked cautiously. Switching the tracks to save 1,000,000 people by sacrificing one? The stranger waved a dismissive hand. You could think of it that way, he said. But it doesn't necessarily have to be 1,000,000 people. It could be for anything. Power, money, even the cure for cancer. I never liked the trolley problem. It was always an impossible choice for me. I wouldn't be able to decide, I said, shrugging. Luckily, I'll never have to. He leaned forward again. But what if you do? He said. What if I make the power to make it happen? This guy is insane, I thought. You have the power, I asked, exasperated. If so, why not do it yourself? Why would you make a random person kill someone to cure cancer? I can't do it myself, he replied. I'm unable to directly interfere. I can only act when someone, of their own free will, and by their own hand, provides me with a soul to do so. I leaned back and crossed my arms. Prove it, I said. Prove that you have the power to do this. Like I said, I'm unable to act, he said. However, I can tell you that when you were 10 years old, you found a frog in a secluded field. You named him Jim. You would return weekly to see him until one day he was no longer there. You had a crush on Jenny in high school, he continued. You still think about her. You want to call her, but keep putting it off. You're planning to visit your brother's grave tomorrow, he said. 2 days ago, a conversation with a coworker reminded you of him. You were going to buy flowers later today from the florist on 7th Avenue. Is this satisfactory? The stranger asked. I sat there, frozen in shock. I had never told anyone about any of that. Ever. No one knew but me. It was impossible. Undeniable proof was staring me in the face. There was no other way that he could have known. It took me a moment to find my voice. Okay, I said shakily. So you need me to kill someone? Kill one person to save others? What you kill for is up to you, he said. You can receive anything you wish. The stranger stood up. You have 20 minutes to decide, he said, looking down at me. You will never have this opportunity again. Think carefully. He turned and pointed. In that alley, where I am pointing, he said, you will find a man. I turned to look at the alley. It was right next to the bus stop. He continued, you will also find a gun. State your desire loudly and clearly before pulling the trigger. He lowered his hand and turned to leave. Decide what you kill for. Decide the worth of a life. The stranger started walking away. Remember, 20 minutes, he said, his voice fading. Will you pull the trigger? I looked at my watch, then slumped back on the bench, overwhelmed. What should I do, I thought. Was there actually a man in that alley? A man who would live or die depending on my decision? Was it worth of a life? Was it more lives? I could save the unsavable, cure the uncurable, find the cure for cancer, fix climate change, discover the secret to immortality. A world without suffering. Just one life lost to save countless others. But what about money? I could be rich. Never work another day in my life. Debt erased, no longer struggling, barely making enough to survive. A life of unparalleled luxury. For one pull of the trigger. Power. I could rule nations, change the course of history. Every law, every war, every scientific pursuit guided by my hand. No one could stop me. Unmatched potential achieved by removing another's. My thoughts were racing. What about the person I would kill? Did they have family? Friends? Were they like me? With their own hopes and dreams? Their entire life gone with one bullet. It would be my fault. It would be my decision that they should die. Their innocent blood would be on my hands. Forever. 15 minutes had passed. Do the ends justify the means? Should I kill them? Or do the means justify the ends? Should I let them live? I kept looking at the alley. I had never been so stressed in my entire life. I could barely think. I had to decide. I had to decide now. I jumped up and started walking toward the alley. There was no choice. I had to do this. The world would be a better place in exchange for one single life. My steps carried me closer. It had to be done. I would make sure they were remembered forever as a hero. Someone who saved the world. Just do it. Keep walking. My heart was aching, tearing itself apart. Get there, pull the trigger. My legs were so heavy. End a life. I struggled to keep moving. I was almost there. I have to. 10 feet from the alley, my legs gave out. I fell to my knees. Tears rolled down my face. I couldn't breathe. I looked down at my hands. They were blurry, shaking uncontrollably. It was too much. I can't do it, I whispered, sobbing. I can't do it. I couldn't kill someone innocent, for a world they would never see. My decision was made. I would not pull the trigger. Trying to control my trembling hands, I pulled out my phone and called the police. It was clear to me now. It couldn't be measured. The worth of a life. Soon after, the police arrived. They couldn't find the stranger I'd been talking to. They did, however, find someone in the alley. Someone holding a gun, waiting for me. There's something in the forest pretending to be a person by decisive unluckiness. The bus ride out was long and quiet. I spent most of it either staring out the window or drifting in and out of sleep. I was the last one aboard after a few passengers trickled off in small rural towns. The bus suddenly came to a halt, and a distraught man got aboard. He stumbled down the aisle, sat across from me, and began to scribble intently into a battered, leather-bound book. He looked older, maybe in his 60s, tired-looking, wearing well-worn and dirty hiking gear. He spent the whole ride either writing or flipping through the pages. About an hour before my stop, the bus driver called out, "Rainham National Park Ranger Station." The man abruptly stood up and rushed to the front of the bus. He searched his pockets frantically, then slapped some loose change onto the fare counter before darting off without saying a word. Sometime later, the bus driver called out my stop. As I was about to exit, I noticed that the man from earlier had, in his hurry, left his book on the seat behind the driver. I figured I'd keep it safe. If I saw him again on the trail, I could return it, or I could hand it over to the rangers on my way back home. The trail was empty except for the occasional deer or rabbit darting between the trees. I spent hours listening to the crunch under my boots, bird calls, and the rustle of leaves and pine needles. As the sun crept closer to the horizon, I figured it was time to set up my camp for the night. I found a suitable spot next to a small stream and began unpacking my backpack. I set up my tent, gathered some firewood, and boiled water from the stream to rehydrate a freeze-dried meal. The sun dipped below the horizon, and the temperature began to sink. I tucked myself into my sleeping bag, but I couldn't shake the urge I had been trying to ignore all evening. I glanced over at the book sitting half buried in the open lid of my pack. I reached for it and flipped to the first few pages. The handwriting was compact but neat. It started off like any trail journal. Short entries about trail conditions, notes on the weather, and a few sketches of flowers. One entry even described a fox encounter in surprisingly poetic detail. I had just turned to another page when I heard a voice call out, "Hello? Anyone there?" I slowly unzipped the tent and poked my head out. In the dim glow of the dying embers, I could just make out the outline of a man standing a few meters away. "Sorry to bother you. I noticed your fire," the man said. "Would you mind if I pitch my tent here? It's getting late and I'd rather not stumble around looking for another spot in the dark." Out here, hospitality felt less like a choice and more like an unspoken rule. "Sure, plenty of space," I answered hesitantly. He crouched and began to stir the fire with a practiced hand. With a few quick motions, he coaxed the embers back into a flame. The fire blared brighter than it had all evening, crackling and alive again, pushing back the shadows and fully illuminating his face. He looked to be in his 50s, nearly bald with small patches of hair clinging to his scalp, dark rings around his eyes, and an unshaven jaw. His clothes were covered in dried mud. He smiled faintly. "Hope you don't mind," he said, glancing up at me. He lowered himself onto a rock across from me and warmed his hands over the fire. "My name's Eric," he said. After a moment, "You been out here long?" I'm John. First day out here. You?" "Long enough," he replied with a chuckle. "Well, I don't want to keep you up all night." I crawled back into my sleeping bag as he pitched his tent next to mine. The last thing I saw before I drifted off to sleep was his silhouette, sitting perfectly still by the fire. "Morning," I mumbled, stepping out of my tent. A small kettle of water hissed quietly on a makeshift grate over the flames. "I didn't hear you get up." He glanced at me with a practiced smile. "Got up early and figured I'd boil some water for your coffee." I froze. "How do you know I drink coffee in the morning?" "I recognized the acidic scent on your breath yesterday. Figured you'd want the water ready." His tone remaining nonchalant. Some habits are hard to miss. I rummaged through my pack and pulled out the small tin of instant coffee. "Well, I've got some bread too if you want some." Eric shook his head. "Thanks, but I've already eaten." He poured the hot water into 2 cups and I stirred some powdered coffee into mine. I reached to pour some into Eric's cup, but he quickly lifted his cup of plain, hot water to his mouth and drank it in one swift motion. Perhaps he prefers tea, though, I thought. Breakfast done, we put out the fire and efficiently packed up the tents and gear. The morning light filtered through the trees, casting long shadows across the forest floor. I unfurled my map and compass and started to plot a course to the next campsite, when I felt Eric put his hand on my shoulder. "I know the way," he said simply. There was no arrogance in his tone, only a certainty that left no room for discussion. The air was crisp and birds called sporadically from the treetops. Eric moved with an ease that made it clear he was more than comfortable here, navigating rocks and inclines without hesitation. We hiked for hours in silence. Curiously, Eric fell back to walk behind me, occasionally offering directions or commenting on my footing. At first, I thought he might just have been giving me some space, but I couldn't shake the feeling that he either wanted to watch me or didn't want me to watch him. The forest seemed to respond to our passage. The rustle of leaves was quieter, and the birds that had greeted the morning had gone silent. Eventually, the urge to pee forced me to set my backpack down, and I walked behind a nearby tree. When I returned, I noticed the main component zipper on my backpack was pulled down just a crack. "Need anything from my pack?" I asked Eric. I looked at your compass to make sure we're heading the right way." Not wanting to antagonize my new hiking companion out in the middle of nowhere, I gave him a nod, and we pressed on. The path gradually widened into a clearing, and the new campsite lay ahead. I unpacked my tent while Eric built the fire with practiced motions. "Here, let me help you with that," Eric said quietly and came over to me. He grabbed the tent stakes and drove them into the dirt with his bare, flat palm. Seeing my surprise, he patted my back, his hand feeling cold, even through the fabric of my shirt. He returned to the fire, sitting perfectly still and watching me with unnervingly attentive eyes. As we waited for the water to boil for supper, I retrieved the leather-bound book from my backpack. As I flipped it open, I noticed Eric's eyes slightly widen, a flicker of recognition that vanished as quickly as it appeared. He shifted back into his usual posture, hands resting on his knees, and fixed his gaze on the flames. Settling back against a log, I flipped to where I left off that evening before and continued to read. October 4th, 2025. We made good time to the first campsite, arriving well before sunset. A great start to our 5-day loop. Clear sky, light wind from the west. A gunshot woke me up after midnight. Eric's bag was empty. I called for him and received no response. He came out of the dark a few minutes later, said he'd had to scare off a bear lurking around the camp. We'll take a look around the area first thing in the morning. October 5th, 2025. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary around the camp. Found prints, not from a bear though. Eric's been mostly quiet. Says he slept badly. Air heavy with thunderclouds on the horizon, but the storm never came in. Trail mostly dry. October 6th, 2025. I haven't seen Eric eat or drink since yesterday morning. He waved off breakfast. At the stream, he didn't refill his bottle. At lunch, he said he wasn't hungry. Maybe he's queasy. I tried to bring up some old stories. He seemed oddly curious, like it was the first time he had heard them. Didn't add details or correct me the way he always does. Just watched the firewood collapse to coals. Otherwise, it was very humid, and a full moon helped to light up the forest at night. October 7th, 2025. I woke up twice last night. Eric was still up. I don't think he noticed me. I decided to confront him this morning about his strange behavior. He just sat there, expressionless. I've noticed that his reactions always come a second too late, like he's trying to figure out how he should respond correctly. His skin looks different too. New wrinkles, a slight yellow tone, and his hair has started to fall out. My only explanation is that something might have poisoned him. October 8th, 2025. It doesn't eat, doesn't sleep, doesn't blink. There is no soul behind its eyes. It just sits by the fire and watches. I cut a hole in the back of my tent. Tonight, I'm leaving. I looked up from the journal and met Eric's eyes across the fire. For a moment, neither of us moved. Then, without breaking eye contact, he said calmly, "The water is ready." My hand shook as I fumbled with a pack of dried chicken and poured in the hot water. The plastic crinkled loudly in the silence. Eric shifted slightly, the firelight flickering across his face. He opened a small pack of chicken, picked out the pieces of meat with his bare, dirty fingers, rinsed off the sauce in the boiling water, and swallowed the pieces whole. After some time, he spoke. "These woods are old. They have stories if you know how to listen." "What kind of stories?" I asked, careful to not let my unease show. "Well, there's one about a creature that's been here longer than any map or trail. Most people think it's just a local legend, but I've seen signs that suggest otherwise." He leaned forward, and for a moment his face held what might have been a look of sorrow. "They say a long time ago, there was a man who lived not far from here. A hunter, clever and strong, but with a hunger in him that no food could satisfy. He began to hunt not for deer, not rabbit, but people. Travelers, wanderers, anyone foolish enough to stray too far into the woods. He ate their flesh, wore their skin, and thought himself above the laws of men. For his crimes, God, or maybe something older, cursed him to walk the forest forever, never resting, never belonging. To torment him further, they say he was given a gift. He could take the shape of any man or woman and wear any face he desired. I could study them, live beside them, almost fool himself into believing he was human again. Almost." Eric stirred the fire with a stick. No matter how much he learned how to laugh, how to cry, or how to tell stories, something always betrayed him. His reflection came back wrong. His eyes were void of a soul. And when people noticed, when they looked too closely, well, he had to feed. He paused, letting the silence fill the clearing. They say he still walks these woods, listening, learning, hoping that someone will mistake him for a human. Yes, spooky story," I muttered, no longer able to meet his eyes. My mind raced. Should I make a move, bolt into the forest and risk being caught in the dark, or stay and act like nothing had changed? Every instinct screamed to run, yet my body was frozen in place like a statue. I studied the features of my companion, and with every glance, my stomach twisted tighter. His skin was pale and patchy, loose in some places, and stretched too tightly over bone in others. Yellowed with hints of purple bruising around his neck. It looked as though it had begun the early stages of decomposition. Even his breathing seemed off, shallow and deliberate, as though he were carefully measuring the amount of air in each inhale, and yet I had been blind to the truth, staring me in the face. I curled my hands in a fist to keep the shaking from showing, forced myself to breathe evenly and to keep my expression neutral. My mind raced to find the right words, a way to break the tension. I rubbed at my eyes, feigning a tired yawn, and muttered something about turning in early, hoping that my voice didn't reveal the dread that had solidified inside me. Just as my mind had started to pick apart the inconsistencies of his disguise, I couldn't help but wonder if he could do the same to me. I slipped into my tent and pulled the zipper closed with slow, careful hands. My fingers shook as I unfolded the map, the paper crackling far too loudly. I traced the lines with a finger, estimating the nearest road at just over 40 kilometers away. The problem was, I couldn't even be sure of our location. Having followed Eric's lead the entire day, it was also a day's trek in daylight, let alone in the middle of the night, but it was the only chance I had. Essentially only flashlight, compass, map, knife, water bottle, protein bars, matches, and the journal. I stuffed them all into a small drawstring sack that usually held my sleeping bag. Impelled by the journal entries, I carefully drew the knife from its sheath. I gripped the knife with both hands to steady it and pressed the steel into the tense nylon until it parted with a faint hiss. I eased myself through the slit, every rustle of the fabric thunderous to my ears, and slipped into the darkness just beyond the firelight. The forest stretched on without end. The only sounds were my rasped breath and the thud of my heartbeat. Beneath it, faint at first, there was something else, a low murmur at the edge of hearing, like someone whispering in the distance. As I ran closer, the sound grew into the unmistakable rush of water. The river was wider than I'd hoped. The moonlight glinted across the surface, silver streaks breaking into shards where the current churned. I hesitated at the riverbank, weighing whether to wade through the freezing water or search for a way around, when a sudden crash echoed from the direction I had come, twigs snapping, branches splintering. Something was moving fast and coming straight towards me. I ripped the sack from my shoulders and hurled it across the water. It landed with a thud on the gravel on the far shore. I stepped into the water. The cold was immediate and brutal, stabbing like needles up my legs. The current nearly swept me off my feet. It wrenched a boot loose from my left foot and dragged it downstream. I waded toward a massive tangle of driftwood, caught against some rocks. My body pressed against the slick wood as I slowly submerged myself until only my eyes broke the surface. I forced myself to stay still, every muscle locked. It crawled from the trees on all fours, its limbs bending in impossible directions, moving with an unnatural elasticity. Its spine arched grotesquely, inverted like a demonic contortionist. Eric's head was twisted around on its own neck with eyes staring forward. It waded into the water, coming straight toward my hiding spot, each step deliberate, like a predator closing in on its prey. It stopped and jerked upright, like a dog catching a scent. It sniffed the air and slowly tilted its head downstream. In a sudden blur of motion, it bolted in that direction, thrashing through the water with a speed that defied anything human. I dragged myself from the freezing water and stumbled onto the shore. I collapsed for a moment on the gravel, heaving for air. I slowly managed to stand up, hoisted the sack over my shoulder, and staggered into the trees. My left foot, now only protected by a wet wool sock, hurt with every misstep. Jolts of pain shot up my leg as I stepped on a sharp rock or a pointy twig. I leaned against a tree and slid down until my back rested firmly against the bark. I needed warmth and dry clothing, but a campfire would likely act as a beacon to my location. Hands shivering, I fumbled for my bag and pulled out the leather-bound book. I held it flat to illuminate the pages with the help of the moonlight as I flipped to the next entry. October 9th, 2025. Humans evolved to be expert pattern recognizers. Our brains expend valuable energy analyzing faces in real time, mouth curvature, the cadence of a blink, the subtle shift of a pupil. Most people don't notice. It's unconscious. But when a detail doesn't fit the expected pattern, something ancient and deep inside us rebels. It's an instinct honed over thousands of years, designed to protect us from the unnatural. If someone is reading this, don't make the same mistake I did. It has spent centuries perfecting its disguise, because it craves the only thing it can never truly be: a human. Don't break the illusion. Not for a second. Not even in your thoughts. I pushed myself off the tree, every joint stiff, and started walking. I forced my steps to be silent and careful. I waded back across the river. My destination was just a short distance away. On the riverbank, I found a trail of broken branches and followed them until I saw a faint glow flickering between the trees ahead. The campsite looked unchanged. The familiar silhouettes of the tents stood exactly where we had pitched them, but there was no sign of Eric. I stripped off my soaked clothes, hung them over a branch, and dug out a dry set from my bag. I sat down next to the campfire and stretched out my hands to feel the warmth. A shift in the air prickled the back of my neck, and I heard the clicking sounds of joints snapping back into place, one by one. I have something I've wanted to tell you. I found this book on the bus. My thumb traced the worn spine as I spoke. I think you know who it belongs to. Perhaps you could return it to its owner for me? Eric stepped out of the darkness. His neck was bruised, and the stretched remnants of his face, pulled too many ways, sagged down. Partially covering his eyes and mouth, he looked at me from across the flames, then sat down on the other side. He took the book from me and placed it on the ground next to him dismissively. He then stretched out his other hand, holding something. Found your shoe. I stared down at the dirty sock protecting my foot for a moment, then forced myself to look up to meet his eyes. Thanks, I managed. Must have slipped off your foot, Eric said casually. I was unlucky. Unlucky, Eric repeated, tasting the word in his mouth. No, you are lucky. Lucky I found it. How would we finish our hike if you couldn't walk properly? Every movement now felt like a performance under scrutiny. Every blink and every word I spoke had to seem natural, too fast, too slow, too rehearsed, and the fragile illusion I had mended for him would shatter. You should get some sleep. The last leg will be the most difficult, Eric stated matter-of-factly. Grateful for the sudden exit, I gave him a small nod and slipped into my tent. But sleep wouldn't come. I lay awake for hours, listening intently and waiting for something to happen. Morning soon arrived, and I emerged from the tent to find Eric exactly where I had left him, though something was different. The item that had kept me alive was gone. As we packed up the tent for the last time, I spotted the now blackened and gray remnants of leather and paper in the fire pit. The trail was uneven and littered with slippery rocks, wet from overnight dew. Concentrating on each careful step gave me a brief mental reprieve from the predator I could feel stalking just a few paces behind me. As I stepped out of the tree line and onto the road, the footsteps behind me abruptly disappeared. I turned and looked back into the dark woods I had spent the weekend trapped in. The only traces of him were quadrupedal prints pressed into the dirt beside my own boot prints. My mind replayed every moment of the last few days like a nightmare I couldn't shake as I waited for my ride home. The bus rumbled as it pulled away from the stop. I leaned back in my seat, the window cool against my temple, and let out a slow breath. After a while, I slipped a hand into my jacket pocket and felt something dry and brittle. Charred scraps of paper rested in my hand. The edges were blackened and fragile, but the writing was still legible. I took out my phone and opened a blank note. I'm doing my best to recount everything that has happened while the memories are still vivid and fresh in my mind. And alright guys, that wraps up some unnerving Reddit horror stories. Would you like to see more videos like this in the future? If so, please comment down below your thoughts, like the video, subscribe to the channel, follow me on Instagram, and follow me on Spotify. It means the world. I appreciate your guys' support. Thank you so much for watching to the end of the video. It helps so much. And comment down below, would you like to see longer videos, shorter videos, or this same length? I read every single comment, so please comment down below. Check out some other videos on the channel. I appreciate you guys watching. And this was Snook, and I'll see you next time. Bye.